Are they committing sedition? They're pretty damn close. Not treason, but they're pretty damn close to the legal definition of sedition. And while we're at it, just reciting the law, the punishment for sedition is death.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I look at the U.S. Criminal Code. I see exactly one crime related to sedition. That's seditious conspiracy. The punishment is not death.
No, seditious conspiracy is not sedition.
Well, where's the statute for sedition, which makes it a crime punishable by death?
Let me go Google it. Are we disagreeing that the punishment for sedition is death?
Yes.
But by the way, if you're still taking boosters, you're a fucking idiot. Not even if you're a 95-year-old geriatric.
Not even.
If you are a middle-aged anybody and you're still taking boosters, you're politically retarded. And
politically or scientifically?
No, politically retarded. But I don't know, keep taking them. You might get scientifically retarded as well.
You should be pissed at all these liars who are claiming to know things that they don't know. Tim Pool quote tweets me and says, Pisco was on the side of the shooter. That is bullshit.
All that I know is Alyssa Slotkin, former CIA, comes out and says, defy illegal orders. The National Guard's going to be shooting citizens in the streets. I'm very concerned. And 2 weeks later, a former CIA elite unit in Afghanistan shoots two National Guard.
So you actually buy this? You actually buy that she, with that video, her and Mark...
I have publicly said that she has blood on her hands.
How the f*** do you figure? How the f*** do you figure? Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description. Welcome, Viva. Thank you so much. I know it took a little bit of time. We had the Thanksgiving week to get back together, but I'm so happy that you're one of the conservatives that I most like to engage with and most, willing to engage with people who think differently, even though I think we have massive differences of agreement. I think that we get along well, and I really appreciate you coming by because I got some questions. I see you on Twitter getting into it with certain people. I have some... I want to do the follow-up, but yeah, let's get into it.
This is, first of all, I don't know. See, the words conservative and Democrat, I go with red pill or blue pill, or retarded and not retarded. I mean, this is where I'm going at this point in time. Depending on what you believe, you might be mentally deficient in a political or intellectual sense.
You got to be careful with that, Viva, because, Trump called Governor Walz a seriously retarded, and it lost him a vote in some state senate somewhere. Did you see that?
You know what? Oh, I saw that, and it's quite hilarious. The funny thing is, I called out. I don't know if I called out the guy who said he wouldn't he wouldn't do the gerrymandering anymore because Trump used the word. There was a journalist who says it's terrible. As a human being, I object to the term retarded. And I'm like, I go through that guy's Twitter feed. He uses the word imbecile and moron, and those are both words which are clinically on par with retarded. So if you think you're morally righteous to say I object to the term retarded, but I use dumb, stupid, moron, imbecile. What are some other ones? You're a hypocrite. Congratulations. You just want to feign moral outrage so that you can use certain words to insult your political adversaries, and then feign virtue to say I'm too good to use the word, but I use moron, imbecile, stupid, dumb, and whatever.
Okay, then say the N-word right now. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely not. You'll never even catch it on like secret recording. I don't use the N-word. I don't use the N-word, and the C word I'm very reluctant to use. I'll only use it when quoting a British movie like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or what's the one with Brad Pitt, Pikey?
I have no idea. Pikey?
It was Pikey. It was Snatch.
Snatch. I've never seen it.
You call yourself a movie aficionado, sir?
When did I call myself a movie aficionado? Some other.
Yeah, the see you next Tuesday word. I don't use that either. The derogatory word for every other race. I'll use only to say the word. But there's something uniquely and historically offensive about the N word, and then the C word is a close second. But other than that, yeah, it is. It's not just fair game. People need to be called retarded when they act. Politically retarded doesn't mean mentally deficient. It doesn't mean you're making fun of a kid with Down syndrome, because anybody who uses that word to refer to someone who actually has a physiological disability, if you were to call that kid dumb, you would be equally as much of a bastard. But Tim Walz, who's politically retarded, literally retarded, and anybody feigning outrage at Trump using that word is a godforsaken hypocrite unless they are holier than Mother Teresa and have never used the word dumb, imbecile, moron, or whatever.
Yeah, I would buy that if you guys weren't saying that telling the military that they have to follow the law constitutes calling for the death of people. I mean, maybe I would stand to hear that double, hypocrisy criticism. Go for it.
Let me flip that on you. if telling the people just to follow the law is nothing outrageous, well, telling someone what the legal consequences are for seditious is just telling them to follow the law as well. So what's wrong with that? You want to
Well,
play stupid? We can play stupid.
wait a second. We're not talking about someone who says what the legal consequences for sedition are. They are also asserting that these people in fact committed sedition, which you don't agree with, of course.
Well, I mean, they are in fact suggesting they committed sedition. No, they're just saying if they committed sedition, the punishment is death. Oh, I'm just quoting the law. Well, nobody needs to be told to not follow unlawful orders. What you are doing when you do that, and you know damn well, because you're not stupid, but you might be mildly sneaky. When you say, hey guys, don't follow unlawful orders. Let me cue that woman's face from Saturday Night Live. You know exactly what you're doing. So don't be stupid. Don't pretend to be stupid. We're not stupid.
But they're not committing sedition, are they?
Are they committing sedition? They're pretty damn close. Not treason, but they're pretty damn close to the legal definition of sedition. And while we're at it, just reciting the law, the punishment for sedition is death. So potential. You got to have a trial and you got to be convicted.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I look at the U.S. Criminal Code. I see exactly one crime related to sedition. That's seditious conspiracy. The punishment is not death.
No, seditious conspiracy is not sedition.
Well, where's the statute for sedition, which makes it a crime punishable by death?
Well, let me go Google it. Are we disagreeing that the punishment for sedition is death?
Yes, because the punishment relates to what is actually the punishment.
Is the potential punishment for sedition death?
No.
Let's see. The potential punishment for sedition in the U.S. law is not death for civilians. The civilian crime for seditious conspiracy carries a maximum of 20 years. The only context in which sedition, this is AI, so take it for what it's worth, is under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Oh, I thought we were talking about that.
Oh, no, I thought we were talking about civilians, such as...
Well, we weren't, because I don't think Mark Kelly and the CIA agent who was pushing the seditious wink, wink, nudge, nudge were civilians. But so we agree, civilian is not punishable by death. Under the UCMG, whatever you want to call it, it's punishable by death. Okay, let's just go ahead and quote the law.
Before we get into it, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge Nate the lawyer. So you do shows and interact with Nate the lawyer a lot. Longtime friend of Nate the lawyer. He contributes as part of LawTube. When I was invited to do the legal, you guys do like layback law occasionally. You'll go on Fridays. And
I've known Nate for now going on 6 or 7 years. I mean, I've known Nate since he had under 1,000 subs, where he couldn't even DM me directly on YouTube. Not that I was a big anything at the time. I just had I think I had like 40 or 50,000 subs. No, I've known Nate for a long time. Got to know him back in the Nicholas Sandmann Democrat, lie of more fake news. But I got to know him then. It's crazy. I mean, he's doing well. For those who don't know, he got rapidly diagnosed with a massive brain tumor, which I from what I understand is not malignant, but anything that's rapidly growing in the brain,
not good.
It's not good. So, and it was removed, and it was a massive surgery, and he's touch wood, and God willing, things will work out well. But yeah, no, it's dude, it's you can have all the bullshit internet fights you want, and if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So that's
yeah, we just wanted to take a moment real quick to shout him out. Hope he's feeling better. And I want to say, despite disagreements between you and Nate, I know Nate is usually not as far in the weeds MAGA wise, maybe more of like a devil's advocate, maybe more of like a centrist type. And you guys disagree viciously, including with Good Logic Joe, that I will see them yell at each other. But I know among you guys that you don't want anything bad to happen to him, and neither do I. And just want to make sure that he's feeling better.
I've seen Joe Neerman yell at a stop sign, so that doesn't mean. For a second, when you said I want to take a moment, I thought you were going to acknowledge that we were on unceded native land, and I was going to that. No, Nate's doing fine.
Why does that trigger you? Why does it trigger you?
Because it's stupid virtue signaling rubbish from a bunch of liberal hypocrites who like to, they like to thank the people that they've exploited for their unwilling sacrifice while doing nothing to help them. So yeah, I don't like hypocrisy, and I don't like virtue signaling. And if I'm ever guilty of it, I want someone to call me out, and I will acknowledge it if it's true.
So let's get into it. I want to respect your time, and I want to get into the meat and potatoes here. This is the kind of structure I want to see. And if you have questions, if you have any objections, you let me know. I want to approach the first half of our discussion taking the view of the MAGA with respect to the Trump second term. So sort of onboarding some of the principles and seeing by MAGA's lights, do you think that Trump, how do you think he's doing in his second term? And then later on, after that, we can sort of take my affirmative liberal critique of it, and we can see what you think of that. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
All right.
I know I shouldn't do it. I'm gonna go to your live chat and see what people are saying
Oh,
about
sure.
me.
Yeah. Just don't get too triggered by them because they'll say some. Listen, your guys say some shit about me.
My guys say some shit about me. Like the second I don't toe certain lines, I immediately become a Mossad agent. And your side will love me so long as I don't toe certain lines. And then the second I do, they're gonna call me a, whatever, a MAGA, uh, super.
Chill. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all the Sanders stuff. But let me see. Hold on, Pisco. I shared the link.
Yes. It's
Oh no, you're live right here. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to your
All right.
chat.
So
Okay,
just
tell that jackass to stop waving his hands around. Why does he keep waving his hands?
all right.
People. Okay, go for it.
Okay. So this is me as a disappointed MAGA voter. And you tell me. I want to get your reaction to it afterwards. Trump is fucking up. We elected him in order to stop the corruption, to drain the swamp, and he's not doing a good job. Number one, he's getting distracted on shit that doesn't matter, that no one asked for. Number two, when it comes to the corruption cases we care about, like Comey, Letitia James, etc., he's putting incompetent people who are screwing the pooch, not doing things fast enough, letting the clocks run out, procedures get in the way, and they're not doing things basically in a competent fashion. And number three, to some extent, he might be complicit. He's either complicit in his personnel decisions, refusing to fire people that he needs to fire, or, with respect to the Epstein files, unexcused reasons of why he's delaying certain things or performing sort of horribly. And he's focusing too much on foreign policy and that kind of shit. And in other ways, it's getting in the way of the core MAGA goal, which was to out the corruption, get rid of it, and drain the swamp. He's not doing that. The same kind of inside interests are allowing to, running roughshod across the administration. And to the extent that he's trying to do stuff, it's all being sort of ruined by incompetence. Your thoughts?
Well, you sound like an authentic MAGA Trump supporter who wants to prevent him from making certain egregious mistakes that even the most ardent MAGA Trump supporters believe that he might be, if not making, getting very close to. The funny thing is this, and I've been qualifying this as constructive criticism versus destructive criticism. And when you know that someone has no aspiration for the success of the individual makes certain criticism, you can say it's destructive because they're trying to take it down. Whereas someone who believes firmly that if Trump doesn't succeed, well, the likes of, I won't say you, but the likes of Kamala Harris, censorship, locking up your political adversaries will reign supreme and lock up everybody who had their chance and missed when they were kicking at that can. You're describing legitimate criticism that I have levied myself. And if your chat doesn't believe me, you can go Google the New York Times article where I was called out by name for being a vocal critic of Trump on the debacle, the objective, abject disaster that was the Epstein failure to launch, so to speak. I was also, and Robert Barnes might be a little bit more critical, depending on how you look at it, or more constructive in terms of his criticism, to say, yeah, we were elected on making the economy strong, closing the borders, which he's done very, very, very well at, save and except for some judicial activism, and not getting bogged down in foreign wars, even less of which regime change in countries like Venezuela. So you're describing the healthy debate that actually exists on a side of a political aisle where people disagree and have open disagreement about that of which they disagree, which you don't see on the left because it's something of a, if it's not a cult, it's pretty damn close, where if you voice these concerns, you are excommunicated and you get absorbed into the right, like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. So you want to go one by one?
Yeah.
The Iranian strikes, I mean, we're like 8 months, well, not 8 months, 6 months out of these now. But for the grace of God, and I dare say also, but for the pushback from the populist base of MAGA, or just conservatives, or just people who don't want to see this country fall back into the hands of, I'm going to be mean, but I'm sort of tongue in cheek, the likes of your side of the aisle. If you want to see Trump and the conservatives win in 2026 and not lose in 2028, they've got to not fracture that coalition that allowed Trump to win in 2024, 2025. One of which was no new wars. I don't blame Trump for not being able to resolve the Ukrainian-Russian war in 24 hours. I think there's a lot of other forces at play that I think both you and I will agree on. But one of the promises was no new wars. And going back to blow up Iran and bomb Iran, if it's arguably nuclear capable, maybe you don't want to start these types of wars with it, but it sort of looked like America was not rope-a-doped, but roped into this war based on some sort of premature...
And that makes Trump weak, doesn't it? I mean, if he's being able to be rope-a-doped, he's weak or complicit. I mean, that's the only possible
Yeah,
Answer, right?
or he tamped down on Netanyahu and said, homie, you're going to agree to a peace now, whether you like it or not. Otherwise, you'll end up fighting all of the Middle East on your own, much like Zelensky's going to end up fighting Russia on his own.
But even the nature of needing to tamp down would imply that Netanyahu has at least some amount of power to have his will actualized. I mean,
would you disagree that
some
foreign nations, they have certain amounts of power? Qatar has certain amounts of power. It's all a question of the value and the function and the value added that it can have for this administration. It is. I'm not necessarily on the fence about this. I'm sort of more on one side than the other. But a lot of people can argue over whether or not. I don't know how the expression goes, but whether or not Israel is using America for its purposes, or whether or not America is using Israel for its national.
Which do you think is more closer to the situation with Iran?
I think it's more along the lines of Israel will try to get away with as much as it can, with the approval of the United States. But at the end of the day, the U.S. is probably using Israel more for American national interest purposes in the Middle East than Israel is using America as its big brother in these wars. But it's definitely a bit of both, and no more than it is with the relationship between Qatar and America, no more than it is with any sort of international relationship. The only question is, at what point does it become self-destructive to the point of compromising national policy for international concerns? And we floated very close to that. I do believe that Israel sort of dragged America into a conflict with Iran that Netanyahu in particular has wanted for decades. I mean, it's on the books. It's nothing controversial. And Trump might have gotten very close to getting, full blown.
Was it the wrong decision?
Time will tell. I put out my prediction at the time that they're going to come back to this and say, yeah, the strikes that we claimed obliterated Iranian nuclear policy didn't quite obliterate it. We might have to go back. And we came very close to that, and we pulled back.
But the thing is, it can't really be a basis of criticism if you say, jury's out whether it was the right call, because you're basically suggesting that, there's a world in which America benefits from this geopolitically, geostrategically, and you're not saying that this strike is a mistake yet, but you're still calling attention to it. And I wonder why that is.
Well, no, hold on. A mistake. It depends. It could be beneficial for all parties involved. I mean, that's the ultimate thing about politics. It could be beneficial for Iran. It was of no real consequence to them. They destroyed some, alleged nuclear facilities. They probably long moved the enriched uranium out of there. And so everybody gets to say they showed their sign of force, they showed their sign of concession, and things go on.
Right. So who are you to say that it was a bad decision or intimate that?
Well, because I think from a domestic policy, it was a bad decision because it fractured a base, which was, we don't want to see another generation of Americans get sucked into another war in the Middle East. To the extent it ended when it did, that might have resulted from the pushback from the base, from a J.D. Vance who happens to listen to the base saying, okay, fine, a few strikes, but boots on the ground is not something that America or Americans, certainly not MAGA Americans, are going to put up with. And so pull back from this stupid escalation of conflict with Iran. And, the irony was, if the fear is that Iran is going to become nuclear capable, and then right afterwards you had what was it, the guy from Russia, I forget his name, I think it was Medvedev, wrong, saying, well, let's just give him nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
All of it was very close to being an abject disaster, but he backed off, and I think he twisted Bibi's arm afterwards and said, look, you're going to agree to a peace, otherwise, if we cut you off, you are surrounded by a number of hostile nations. Whether or not those nations are as, in fact, hostile as everybody says they are towards Israel versus more hostile towards the Palestinians and certain terrorist entities such as Hamas, there's another dynamic there. But the threat of saying, okay, Israel, you want to go rogue, and you don't have our support anymore, it would have the same effect as immediately forcing parties to resolve their own disputes, the same way it would if you said, Zelensky, go fight Russia all you want. You no longer have our support.
Here's what I'll grant you. I think that it's, according to reporting and what appears to be reality, there are some elements within the Trump administration that are less willing to go along with everything that Israel wants. And I'll grant you that. And, who Trump listens to on a given day, maybe it's different. Here's my question, though. Are you worried that the holding back against Israel isn't a result of the base pushback? What it's a result of is pressure and enticement from Gulf states, Saudis, Qatar, etc.
Holding back, clarify that. What do you mean, holding
by which I mean what you described right there, that is that Trump is saying no further Netanyahu or you go alone. his decision to, in your terms, under your lights, hold Israel back at least somewhat in terms of their ambitions in the Middle East, do you think it's more likely that as a result of Trump being pressured by his base or Trump being enticed by his close relationships with Gulf states such as Saudi Arabia and Qatar?
Well, that would be one of those causation doesn't equal correlation where
Sure.
we'll never be able to definitively know whether or not it's him responding to the pushback from his base or favors from Qatar. Qatar probably has more in common with Israel than it does with Hamas, and it probably has more in touch with Israel than it does with Iran to begin with. So I don't know, but there'll never be a satisfactory answer to that. You'll say, all right, Trump pulled back, twisted Bibi's arm, forced a settlement there, forced a peace settlement, but it was only because he was listening to Qatar and not to his base. It can never be proven nor disproven.
I just think that it's something that we ought to be thinking about because one of the things that I will often hear from the MAGA, and they actually believe it, right? They claim to believe it, and when you push them on that, they at least profess to believe it. Some of them that it's really bad that we have these foreign entanglements with the private interests in government, and they'll acknowledge it when there's potential, that potential in Democratic Party. Say no less than Hunter Biden, Burisma, and everyone's eyes light up in the MAGA base. But the same kind of concern of the obvious conflict of interest that exists vis-a-vis Trump ambitions and, whether it's crypto deals, energy deals, what have you, building resorts, building those kinds of real estate deals, the amount of conflict of interest abound. And so why shouldn't we take a negative inference that was freely taken by everyone with respect to the Bidens, with China, with Hunter Biden's deals? Why shouldn't we take that negative inference of Trump and his decisions?
Well, I don't think you have the same fact pattern to take that negative inference when it comes to Israel, America's support of Israel, or America's coalitioning with Qatar, or at least aligning with Qatari interests. You don't have that same corruption, and I mean raw corruption. You'll argue that there's the same type of corruption in terms of, giving billions in foreign aid to Israel, so long as Israel buys American weapons. And I, have always referred to that as basically taxpayer money laundering. But it's not the same level of corruption that you see in Ukraine in terms of Ukrainian officials siphoning hundreds of millions of dollars off the top and the aid never getting to the end of it. You are right. I mean, I agree with you in that there's a massive blind spot double standard where the very same people who were saying, why are we supporting this endless proxy war against Russia via Ukraine, money laundering, etc., turn around and say, but now we still have to support Israel. And they just say, well, Israel's a true ally, Ukraine's not a true ally. And that's a double standard that I think exists with them. The broader foreign entanglements, I think there's a lot of people saying, stick to the founding fathers, wise words of not going abroad to look for monsters to destroy. And everybody's saying, like, how can you ever align with Qatar? There is a realm of the universe where even Qatar, Israel, America, Europe, the interests align, because at the end of the day, except for the profits from war that have been, ingrained in American politics, there's a realm of the universe where peace is universally beneficial. Now, Qatar doesn't have to remain an enemy for the rest of humanity. Neither does Saudi Arabia. But the people who say, well, you can never negotiate with Qatar or Saudi Arabia because they sponsor terrorism, seem to want perpetual wars where the only alternative is full destruction of certain countries and certain states. So the idea that Trump would even entertain discussions with or align with certain interests of Qatar for the purpose of stabilizing the Middle East is not a betrayal of anything, in my view, to the extent it's not done at the expense of betraying allies or betraying the innocent. But there is a bit of a blind spot for those who say, get the hell out of Ukraine. We want to have nothing to do with this foreign conflict, enough foreign wars, but everything that Israel ever needs to continue its war against Iran, because Netanyahu's wanted this for the last 20 some odd years.
I might humor that explanation if it wasn't so pervasive, not just in the foreign sense, but in the domestic justice sense. It's not just the decisions on a foreign policy matter. It's pardon decisions. I mean, he's pardoning people who have the same kind of problematic, foreign ties. He's, there's some allegations, though I don't think that you can prove it goes up to Trump, with respect to certain Israeli officers who might or may not have been involved in certain stings of an operation in Las Vegas and in Nevada. There's every aspect of the use of the presidential authority seems to be targeted at, or at least potentially there's a conflict of interest at a bare minimum in improving the financial position of Trump and Trump affiliate, deals, private ventures, etc. And so that's problematic, isn't it?
You remember the last time when you said, just try to get inside of my mind. And I said, I don't want to be inside of your mind because it's broken.
Oh, yeah.
This is the problem of like shotgun reasoning, or like I say, spaghetti on the wall reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
You throw in so many things and like, oh, how did we get from support to Qatar to the pedo out of Nevada, and then you say, well, he's doing things to favor Israel while simultaneously doing things to favor Qatar, and then he's doing things to favor.
Yeah, what's the through line? Is the through line some kind of coherent and consistent foreign policy, or is the through line, he's going to some extent and not the full extent to try to please certain interests at certain times for his own benefit?
Well, for his own benefit is a very, very big qualifier that you added in there, to the extent that he's trying to entertain a number of outcomes for the purposes of deals. And I'm not trying to say like deals like this is what politics is. It's the jostling of power for the purposes of achieving your desired goals. That's what politics is. You pick on, he pardoned, I mean, the Vegas pedo guy is a big deal. Like they let that guy go back to Israel. He'll never come back to America again to face charges for soliciting sex from a minor who appeared to be mentally
And Trump
deficient.
could get him back, right? Trump,
No,
you don't think Trump would have the power if he was able to stop Israel from their ambitions? Why couldn't Trump just say, "Hey, we want this guy back," and get him back?
Yeah, well, we can't find him. I mean, everyone can jostle there and say, like, "Oh, we tried, we couldn't find him." But set that aside. But then you get into the issues of him pardoning a Democrat guy, and I don't know the details of the
wild. Yeah.
Well, so then that doesn't fit within your narrative of him only doing things to favor his own. And so basically, look, in your own mind, you're picking here, you're picking there, and ignoring here and ignoring there when it doesn't fit the narrative. The pardons have been a notoriously political thing to begin
Agreed.
with.
Yes.
Whether or not it's Joe Biden pardoning the Kash for Kids judge or not having any idea who he was pardoning, there are some questionable pardons that Trump has issued. There's no question about that. Most recent of which is the former president of, is it Honduras?
Honduras. Yeah, because that's what I want to go to next is the Venezuela stuff, and see how you feel about it. Because the whole argument is this drug trafficking is a chemical warfare. We are in a state of chemical warfare with these cartels who are importing drugs, and it's such a huge issue. We need to kill all these people. And you know what? If some innocent people, unfortunately, are there, so be it. They're killing Americans by the millions. But let's pardon.
Nobody said that second part just yet. This is the thing where we might not disagree on much here. The pardoning of the former Honduran president, it's interesting. I think on the one hand, yes, it is on its face, like when Slotkin, comes, how can he be, it's such a crisis, we have to kill drug dealers while he's simultaneously pardoning them. It's like, okay, that's a legitimate point. It's not because she's an idiot CIA agent who, as far as I'm concerned.
She's right.
Well, she's not. She's right unless there's a good explanation. Someone says, all right, well, if it happens to be that this former Honduran president is now going to turn state evidence, so to speak, or become an ally, rat out the bigger issues, well, then she's not right anymore. And like, it's the same thing with like the idea of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm prima facie, or I should say a priori, against it. If it turns out that they say, okay, from a consequentialist perspective, we'll pardon Ghislaine Maxwell if she gives us names and we can now go convict 12 pedophile sex abusers, well, say, okay, it's the wrong thing, but it ultimately maximizes the good. So that could be an explanation for why the pardon of the Honduran...
It could be, but you're giving the benefit of the doubt that it could be. So what I'm seeing is, and you tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, that's fine. I want to know that I'm wrong. It feels like you're withholding judgment on many of these issues, on the Iranian strikes, on the pardon, on what's going on, with the guy that's been sent to Israel, and you're withholding judgment because you see the potential that it could, in the end, be beneficial for the net good. And so you're going to hold back from calling those acts bad, or you're going to condemn those acts until you see it. And so you're giving that benefit of the doubt. But that's not the approach that you would give to Democrats.
Well, no, that's a broad statement. It's not the approach I would give to Joe Biden, because putting his son on a payroll and then arguing net benefit, for Burisma, I don't think we have the same fact pattern. But we went over this the last time, and I'll probably get the same quasi flack. When I'm dealing with people who are not confirmed demonstrable scoundrels, I will give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove that they no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt. Joe Biden got the benefit of the doubt, at least for me, for a little bit before I realized he was a demonstrable criminal. Even for, I mean, I can give you a number of examples of people who got the benefit of the doubt and then destroyed it, and others who, who I say they still deserve the benefit of the doubt because they're not demonstrable scoundrels. Ro Khanna will be one example of a man who I don't think deserves to be treated on par with Adam Schiff or Kinzinger or Nadler or Schumer. So when it comes to Trump, like, why might he do this? He's not a dumb person. He's not politically suicidal yet, as far as I can tell. He might be doing things that are borderline politically suicidal. But when he does something that I say, okay, I disagree with it, like on its face, how do you reconcile this? I'm not convinced by the explanation yet, and I'll have to see some of it bear out in reality, but that's a reasonable explanation. When it comes to trying to think of some, nobody's defending that guy who was released from Nevada. I just don't think that falls on Trump. I think that falls on Wolf or whoever the district attorney was in Nevada.
Well, it would fall on him to the extent that he's not demanding him back, right? He has
Look,
it's the same thing with Bondi, right? Because like the argument that Bondi is the reason we're having all these Epstein files issues, it's cope because Bondi works for Trump and Trump loves Bondi because Bondi just does what Trump wants. And same thing with this guy, that Trump has the power to get rid of Bondi, and he has the power. If he really wanted this Israeli guy back, he would be able to get him.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that Trump loves Bondi because she does whatever he says, because apparently it takes some accidentally leaked text message that he posts on Truth to get Bondi to do her freaking job. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, we're only 9 months in. I will continue to be critical of Bondi because I think she deserves it. Even before the Epstein debacle, I think Bondi, she is corrupted out of her position. And I'm not saying in any really bad, like, Joe Biden level corruption. She's conflicted out of her position of DOJ, where her prior relationship with Pfizer, in my view, precludes her from being able to do what she's been tasked to do as Attorney General.
On COVID or something?
Well, on any form of accountability, you can't have an Attorney General who ethically and under any rule of law would be precluded from acting against her foreign client, that being Pfizer, to now potentially have to adjudicate on certain issues that are before the Court of Appeal as to whether or not a whistleblower lawsuit against Pfizer can proceed because Biden's DOJ dismissed the lawsuit. So,
my God, if that's enough to conflict out Pam Bondi, what must you think of Trump? If the mere fact that she, I don't know, represented Pfizer or was a foreign agent of Qatar, that's enough to conflict out Pam Bondi. Holy shit. Like the level of conflicts of interest for Trump.
One is elected, one is appointed. And okay. Whether or not everyone knew the full extent of her, what I think is an ultimate inability to do what is her job, is a separate thing. So, with Bondi, she just has been inadequate. Whether or not they're over their head, corrupt, incompetent, Bondi has been pursuing Biden-era persecutions of Douglas Mackey, the meme guy who ultimately got exonerated by the Court of Appeal, Bitcoin Jesus, Roger Ver. Their DOJ persisted in Biden DOJ persecutions. Second Amendment issues as well. But when you have, I don't know how familiar you are with the Brooke Jackson Key Tam lawsuit against Pfizer. It's a fraud lawsuit initiated by a citizen against a corporation of a fraud initiated against the government because the government does not take action. And this woman, Brooke Jackson, who was in on the trials with Pfizer, filed this lawsuit. It went through the course for a couple of years. Then the Biden DOJ ultimately takes hold of the case and dismisses it. Says, yeah, we don't want to sue Pfizer for fraud against the government. We paid them $10 billion for a so-called safe and effective vaccine, I'll put it all in quotes, that prevents transmission, and it did none of the above. And then yet you have the DOJ of Trump under RFK's HHS pursuing that dismissal of a fraud lawsuit against the government of America. And then you find out that, Pam Bondi couldn't legally, ethically ever act against Pfizer because she was their of counsel in 2021. That's a problem.
She could recuse herself. I mean,
she could. They could hire, but she has done not that, and she hasn't hired a special prosecutor either. So, there's a number of concrete things where I think Bondi is either in over her head, or you could say corrupt and conflicted and whatever, or one could say.
So why does that extend to Trump then? I mean, Trump got a second chance by the American people. The American people gave him a second chance after all of, this is me taking on the MAGA perspective, all right? So, guys, I disagree with a lot of the framing and stories that Viva Frei has brought up right now. I think that the COVIDs are very safe, and I dispute the characterization of the Pfizer Yeah.
He called me before. He said he agrees with everything. Everybody watching.
So I disagree with the characterization of what Pfizer said their vaccine would do. I disagree with like a bunch of stuff. So I'm just taking on the role from the perspective of MAGA, though.
You disagree with?
Well, let's not get into it. I disagree with your characterization of what the vaccines were promised to have done.
Let me pull your tactic on you. What do you think Pfizer was supposed to produce?
I never saw a statement from Pfizer that guaranteed that the vaccines would stop transmission totally of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. I'll pull up the sales.
All right. We'll see. We'll see. What I will say is, taking on the perspective of a MAGA person, it's unconscionable to think that this wouldn't extend as far as Trump. Trump was given, thank you for the raid, a second chance by the American people after all the shit, the MAGA perspective, he went through. He was attacked by the media. He was attacked by the prosecutors. He was attacked by the Democrats. And after all of that, one of his premises is he will run a tight ship. He will get rid of the corruption. And what you're telling me right now is Pam Bondi is so obviously conflicted to the point of you're willing to even say potentially corrupt and bad at the job. And that is obvious to everybody. And yet he keeps her on. Then he's either complicit in the corruption or useless at stamping it out. It's one or the other, and it has to extend as far as Trump. You can't say, unless you're willing to say, all right, he's sleepy Trump, and he doesn't actually have cognizance of what's going on.
The buck, I mean, the reality is the buck stops at the president. The other reality is you're dealing with a federal government, which is the largest corporation or the largest employer. I mean, I'd say basically in the world, but I'm exaggerating. And then the question is, what information even gets to Trump at the level that he's been siloed?
I know,
off.
but he's read it on Comey, though. He's read it on Comey. He's read it on Letitia James. He's in the weeds, and I would say, when we get to the liberal part, a horribly corrupt way. He's in the weeds on some of these decisions and like directing specific prosecutions. And this is the attorney general. We're not talking about some random AUSA somewhere doing whatever. It's his AG who he knows and he loves and constantly praises. And it's his people who he follows and who he listens to sometimes calling it out. What the criticism is, like, you can't possibly say that the Pam Bondi angst hasn't reached his ears. If it hasn't reached his ears, then he's in a bubble, and that's its own problem.
Yep. No. Well, I think we agree with that. If it hasn't reached his ears, he's in a bubble, and it's a problem. And if it has reached his ears and it's been downplayed, it's a problem, and it'll play out on the political field. I mean, that's the reality. It's not. See, your perspective is to just take down the guy because you want to say everything that you can attribute to any form of incompetence should therefore be discrediting as a standalone
That
issue.
was the standard for Biden. That was the standard for Biden. Every time something bad happened, Biden caused the death of Laken Riley. Biden is the reason that, if something happened on his watch.
Biden immigration policy certainly did.
Ukraine, the reason Russia-Ukraine is because of Biden. The fact that Gaza attacked Israel is because of Biden.
I wouldn't say on Gaza, but I would say on Ukraine. Yeah, when you tell Russia they can penetrate a little bit, I mean, you got to be stupid.
That was a bad statement, but I don't think it's the reason why Russia attacked.
Thank you for conceding that.
Oh yeah,
Russia,
it was
when there's weakness and when there's a corrupt, demented buffoon at the helm of a ship. Shit happens. I mean, that's just the way it is.
But the thing is, like, that's what the difference between you and me. When Biden does something corrupt, I'll call it corrupt. He pardoned his son. That was fucking corrupt. When Biden does something, when Biden says a little minor incursion, maybe we won't do anything. That was bad and horrible decision, stupid decision. I call it out. But when Trump obviously does something corrupt or like malfeasance or isn't firing the person who you say is corrupt, you're like, oh, maybe, who knows? Like, maybe he doesn't hate. Like, that's the difference.
You were here for the part of the conversation when I criticized Trump for the strikes in Iran.
I know, but you're like, maybe it might turn out good. I'm not.
If I don't say it the way you want me to say it, then it's like I never.
Because it feels like you're trying to maintain relationships with people of the administration, and so you're going to withhold at least the extent. Like, you're not going to full on say Trump is corrupt ever. You're not going to say a decision that Trump does is corrupt, and you're not going to.
If I think Trump is corrupt, I'll say that. But that's a very interesting confession through projection that you would impart on me for someone who's been cited in the New York Times as being someone who called out Trump specifically on the Epstein issue. And just recently, there was another article where I was like, I'm glad to see I'm on the side of people who call out both sides. But the difference is, I mean, and I've said it before. Yeah, I'm calling out Trump. I call it constructive criticism because the country will go to shit under a Biden, under a Kamala Harris, under a Tim Walz. I mean, if whether or not you want to say that publicly, I'll choose to believe that you believe it because you seem to have half a brain. When I'm trying to make sure that Trump doesn't allow that to happen again, it's constructive criticism. If I find that Trump is absolutely thoroughly corrupt, or even just, I won't even qualify it. If he does something that is bona fide corrupt, in my opinion, I will damn well call it out. Much in the same way when I say I think Pam Bondi is acting in a way that is ostensibly corrupt, and she should be fired. We'll see. We'll see who's at the AG's office in 3 months from now. It's 9 months in. Trump has a high turnover rate in both first term and even now. So we'll see. There's rumors that Kash Patel, who I don't think Kash is corrupt. I just think Kash has proven himself to be
not ready for the moment. But why? Because he's more worried about his patches, because he says Valhalla and he does cringe press conferences.
That was cringe. See, this thing, I wouldn't pick on him for that. And I didn't pick on him for that because I think that's sort of like irrelevant critique.
Yeah.
When they come out today with their massive press conference, and right before they come out, it's like, my goodness, would it have not been a little bit better if Kash hadn't come out in the wake of Charlie Kirk and made a factually incorrect public statement? Would it not have been better if he had not come out in the wake of the DC shooting and made a statement that was just almost like, what the hell are you watching? So now he's got his third time. I said, it's going to be third time's a charm to get it right, or it's going to be 3 strikes, you're out, and you're going to get booted. But we'll see. Like, I don't think Kash is corrupt. I just think he might not be fit for the position and not be the man of the time for the role that he's been given. Same thing goes to Pam Bondi. I think Andrew Bailey would be exponentially better.
Oh, God.
Because he would be, I think, I would say, more ruthless and more less prone to making silly mistakes that undermine the ruthlessness when it's needed. Pam Bondi, look, whether or not you like Matt Gaetz, I think he would have been far more effective than Pam Bondi for a number of reasons. One of which might have been that he would have, caused people to melt down and cry with anger, where he probably could have gotten away with
liberal tears.
Yeah, while the liberals cry and scream in the street like that woman back in 2016. So, but I won't call something corrupt if I don't think it's corrupt. And I will call it corrupt whether they're Democrat or Republican.
Okay.
And then the other, you'll say Liz Cheney. Well, she's no longer Republican, so when I call her corrupt, that's not calling it out on the right.
That's what you did about Comey, because when people would say, "Hey, even Republicans say that Trump is doing bad things," you're like, they're rhinos. They're not actually Republicans anymore. Well, so I mean, everyone does that.
Yeah, it's no true Scotsman.
Yeah,
but hold on, now I just lost the
window. No. I want you to. So let's take the foot off the gas a little bit to talk about Kash Patel, and through that talk about our mutual Twitter acquaintance who's blocked me, Julie Kelly. So Kash Patel comes out, and you weren't expecting that, were you?
No. Just so if I look confused, it wasn't because of that. I pulled out the Zoom window and then I couldn't bring it back up. Julie hasn't blocked. The funny thing is this: I still maintain relations with people with whom I have vehement disagreement.
Well, she blocked me. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've been told that she's block friendly, but thus far, she has not yet blocked me because I think we ultimately agree on a number of substantive issues. But sorry, yes, go ahead.
So Kash Patel comes out, and there's a news today, this morning, of the arrest of the dreaded pipe bomber. And there's been all this consternation among, I would mention, both right-wing and left-wing circles. Why have we got this guy? This guy who supposedly planted bombs near the DNC, RNC, so much so that it was like physically close to the vice president-elect, Kamala Harris, at the time, allegedly. This is, again, MAGA perspective. And they announced this. You're skeptical. And the affidavit, I would actually agree, seems sparse. The affidavit says cell phone.
Do you think if Kamala Harris was within an atomic measurement of that pipe bomb, she wouldn't have used it as a badge of honor to claim that she was almost assassinated in 2021? I mean, it's so preposterous that she hasn't said a damn word about it. If it were true, and if it were a viable bomb, and if Kamala Harris were within the slightest vicinity, set aside the fact that the entire response would have been different or ought to have been different, she would have used that as a badge of honor to demonize the far right, unless they knew that it wasn't a far right.
Are you shitting me? Wait, real? So you really believe that? So you think that Kamala Harris was read in and said and knows that this is a hoax?
Well, I think what I think is irrelevant. I think everybody knows that at least what we're being told right now. I think everybody knows it's a hoax or an inside job. And a hoax, again, means different things. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It might just mean that.
So here's the question, Viva. Is Kash Patel in on it? Because you don't believe this official story, do you?
I do. I can be convinced, but as of right now, I read that affidavit. Do I believe that apparently the kid's autistic. I mean, I say kid, the 30-year-old dude is autistic, lives with his parents. His grandmother said he's, borderline nonverbal. Everybody wants to protect family. I read that affidavit thoroughly in my stream today. For those who don't know and didn't read it, the evidence or the allegations in the affidavit, it's not all the evidence right now, it's just, the summary evidence to warrant the arrest, is that a year to 2 years before the January 6th pipe bomb was planted, he bought pipes and caps and apparently some timers, generic kitchen timers at Walmart. There's no explanation as to how he made the black powder, the homemade black powder. And then he planted these bombs and managed to evade the authorities for 5 years. I'm very skeptical. I know Dan Bongino personally, so I think I do sincerely believe that he's a trustworthy man who wants to do good. Kash Patel, I don't know personally, and I know that Kash has made objective mistakes that are unbecoming of anybody in his position, that whether or not you're of good faith or bad faith, corrupt or not, you still can't make those types of mistakes. You can't misspeak when it comes to identifying having a suspect in custody when you don't, and also looking for a suspect when they're already in custody. But I know I'm very skeptical. I'm amenable to being convinced, like in that affidavit where it says the pipe bombs had 2 kitchen style clock timers. All right. And this guy bought 2 kitchen timers at Walmart a year before. It's like, all right, I asked the FBI on Twitter, they won't answer. Are those the same thing? Because you can trade that you should be able to easily identify. Were the 2 that were on the pipe bombs the same 2 timers that were bought from Walmart by this guy? Yes or no? If it's yes, I can be convinced. If it's no, but we can't tell, well, then I'll wait a little bit. So I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical as to how this took 9 months, even under the new FBI, to determine. Janine Pirro coming out and saying we had to examine 200,000 pipe caps or pipe sales, and we had to cross-reference and yada yada. I'm not in the intelligence industry, but by all accounts of those who seem to be, this could have been done within a month, and it ought to have been done within a month, come February 2025. That being said, I'm not going to be the backseat driver. This is why didn't you do this 10 months earlier or 7 months earlier? They did it now. I'm not thoroughly convinced by the allegations in the affidavit, nor am I even convinced that the photograph that we've seen of this guy
is the same person.
Remotely looks like the hoodie sweater person. So I'll suspend. I will not call anybody corrupt peddling a lie yet, though others are. I'm just going to say from the explanations I've heard, from the Steve Baker expose, from my understanding, I'm not convinced yet. I'm not stubbornly one way or the other. And if they have concrete evidence, like they say, yes, here's the receipt of the clocks that he bought at Walmart, and they are the serial number, same ones that we have on these bombs. All right, let's see it. And then the whole explanation, you'll see it in due course under the legal process. So hold tight. After a press conference of 25 minutes where all they basically did was sing their own praises, I don't have to be on the left to know how you viewed that press conference. You looked at that press conference, and everybody watching on your channel said, this was the biggest circle jerk, pat on the back, stroking our own egos I've ever seen. They didn't have one lick of evidence other than Janine Pirro saying that he bought the pipes themselves.
And the location data stuff.
Other than that, there was no evidence.
Well, that's why I'm worried. I'm worried, and I think this will get into the Comey and Letitia James stuff. I'm worried that if this is all they have, they're not going to reach beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case. And I think, go for it.
No, because I'm reading through the affidavit, and I was like, okay, fine. They allege that he bought some pipes and some caps between 2019 and 2020. And they allege that he bought some wiring and some 9-volt. I said, okay, that might get me to issue an arrest warrant, but that won't get me to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. So we'll see what further evidence comes out. But the problem is, you're dealing with this news being disclosed a month after Steve Baker's expose identifying.
Which you believe?
I find it compelling. And again, you're like, it's at the risk. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be Steve Baker. I wouldn't want to be the Blaze right now. That being said, I don't believe that.
So for the background for the audience, Steve Baker, who I believe works for the Blaze, they released this allegation, essentially strongly stating or implying, I think stating that it's very likely that the person who planted the bomb is affiliated with the U.S. Capitol Police. I think now was transferred maybe to the CIA or something like that.
What do they call it? They call it a there's a word for it, but not in the CIA, but she's basically like a security guard, a campus security.
And she's a woman, and apparently she had
to walk.
She's a Democrat, you said?
No. I said she's 5'7", has a bit of a what they call the gait because there was
the gait analysis.
And she was whether or not it's the same person was unequivocally and admittedly by all accounts a Capitol police officer who was firing rubber bullets and pepper balls on the crowd in a manner that was described as not being less than lethal.
But here's the problem, Viva. It can't be two people. The laws of the universe still apply.
It could be more than one. But the question was, of the footage of the person in the hoodie with the glasses and the mask walking around, you look at, first of all, the fact that the guy's black doesn't mean much because you can't really see much. He seems to be, at least from the one picture that's circulating online, skinny. His shoulders go out a lot more than in the video. Admittedly, it's wearing a hoodie and whatever. But then there's, Steve Baker put out an expose, which identified person of interest 2, person of interest 3, which is based on Barry Loudermilk's report. And there's a lot of stuff that makes a lot of sense in that. Again, I wouldn't want to be Steve Baker or The Blaze right now, but that's why I'm the analyst and not the journalist.
I know, but you were promoting that and you were yelling at Julie Kelly because she didn't believe it.
No, I was yelling at Julie Kelly because Julie Kelly's logic is off, where Julie Kelly says the CBS has debunked Steve Baker's story because the alibi is that the person was petting their puppies. They have a video of them petting their puppies.
At the exact time when they would have happened.
And then I say, well, Julie, how do you accept that as the answer when you don't believe the pipe bombs were even placed at that period of time? So, I'm not promoting I know what I believe, but I know also it just doesn't make any sense. You can't say I believe the FBI when they exonerate the person Baker suspected because they have an alibi, a video of them petting their puppies when they don't have more than one
at the time when it's alleged to happen.
But then I don't believe the FBI when they tell me that the pipe bombs were placed at 7:30 and 8:15 at night.
Oh, so yeah.
You can't reconcile those two mutually incompatible beliefs. The bottom line, though, that press conference, if I'm on your side, if I'm a Democrat, if I hate the Trump administration, I look at that and say, holy crap, this was a big-ass circle jerk to tout the Trump administration, and the evidence was borderline zero. Then I go read the affidavit, and even the evidence in the affidavit is quite thin, maybe sufficient to get an arrest warrant, but certainly not on its face based on that affidavit enough to convict a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. And we'll see where it goes. But then you start hearing like this kid's 30 years old, lives with his parents, allegedly autistic according to his grandmother, managed to evade authorities for 5 years. The affidavit, documents when he bought these what are by all accounts pretty common household items, bristle, what do they call it? Steel, what is it called? Steel wool. Eye protective wear. That's now evidence of someone building a bomb. Some pipes and some pipe caps, which there's a number of innocuous reasons to buy, and these were a year to 2 years before the bomb.
Yeah, it was like 2019, maybe 2018.
No, 2020, and then it was as close as it got was like 7 months, give or take, and then he continued to buy items afterwards, and then managed to evade authorities for 5 years. But then obviously the argument's going to be that the FBI was never looking for him. Then the question is going to be, why was Ray's FBI never looking for him? Was he a Democrat operative? But all that to say is, I just we'll see where it goes. I'm not convinced right now. I was not sufficiently convinced by what was presented, but I don't think Kash Patel is corrupt. I think he's in over his head. Pam Bondi on certain issues, I think she's conflicted, and I think she's over her head, and I think she should have been replaced before the Epstein debable.
But you don't blame Trump for not doing that. You don't blame him for that.
I do. I mean, look, it's the same mistake he made the first time around, and maybe he thinks this time around his mistake. He's going to remedy his mistakes of too much turnover in the first term with undue loyalty in his second term. But then again, okay, so I blame him. But what do you want to come of that blame? It's a wrong decision, and I'll criticize him for it. But I'm not. It doesn't go from him not firing Pam Bondi to him being a pedophile. I mean, so I won't.
I agree with that. Wait, no, I agree with that. I think that and frankly, I think this of Massey and Ro Khanna and a lot of the Democrats as well, that people make assumptions about what is in the Epstein files and what occurred when we haven't seen smoking gun proof for some of the most memed answers, including that there's allegations or even provable things that Trump engaged with minors in sexual activities, that it goes beyond the couple third parties that we know maybe had close connections with Epstein. The reason why I criticize Trump so much for the Epstein files is one that I think should be understandable to MAGA people. Namely, his response makes no sense. It makes no sense given what was established and what people said. So on the one hand, he says, we have this memo released from the FBI and DOJ unsigned that says, case closed. This doesn't implicate anyone else. We're not going to investigate more. To investigate more would be useless. And so this is not, stop asking. We released everything we can. And then
he came around on it after some severe backlash and pushback from his base. Now, by the way, you say there's no smoking gun evidence. I'll offer my retort. There's smoking gun evidence that Trump is himself not implicated in the Epstein files in any nefarious way. That smoking gun evidence is Michael Wolff, that scumbag POS journalist, trying to suborn.
He's a scumbag. He is a scumbag.
But he's trying to suborn extortion material from Jeffrey Epstein against Trump, and Epstein himself doesn't have it. So, as far as I'm concerned, I wanted to go to.
Then why does he want to hide it? Why does he want to hide it then?
There's a number of reasonable explanations. It might embarrass some certain specific foreign nations. It might embarrass some specific donors. It might embarrass a community. I mean,
that's bad, Viva. That's corruption. If it's the case that it would embarrass those donors and it would embarrass, those are the first things that you thought about, other nations, and he hides it. That's first of all,
let's phrase. You use the word corruption, and I'll say the word politics, because at the end of the day, pushing back, he then comes back and says, yeah, let's release it now. And he needed that pushback from his most loyal supporters or his most honest critics. So you call it corruption because that's your way just to write off an individual and not address issues on an issue by issue basis.
But it's not just that. He then goes after Marjorie Taylor Greene.
It was a wrong decision by Trump, objectively, patently, and demonstrably wrong, because it's fractured a base. I don't think it contributed to the those special elections, whatever we just had there. But it was obviously demonstrably a bad decision. So from there, you want to call it corrupt because that allows you to write off the individual.
Put that aside. Take a gun in the MAGA perspective. He's now going after Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you have Ben Shapiro going on his show absolutely lying and pretending that the reason why Trump is going after Marjorie Taylor Greene is because MTG is making a play, as opposed to the reason why Trump is going after Marjorie Taylor Greene is because she didn't listen to him when he's like calling Lauren Boebert to the Situation Room to try to whip votes with the DOJ. That's why he's going after her. Like, how do you justify that as a MAGA person?
I've never justified it. I mean, go look at my tweets. I said it was a big mistake. He should make up and he should apologize. Period. Like, there was even if he's right, there was nothing to be gained by going after Marjorie Taylor Greene. You basically, there's still time for her to come back on that decision, but he's basically pushed out the most populist, the most hardcore blue blood MAGA in the movement. He pushed her out, and who's going to replace her? I mean, you'll get a Lindsey Graham replacing her. I said there was no logical reason for going as hard as he did against Massey and against Marjorie Taylor Greene. I said it from the beginning. Now, that doesn't mean I agree with Thomas Massey on everything at all, but it was, even if he was right, it was politically the wrong decision to do. And I was vocal about it at the time and still am. I still think there's time to make up for it. So, but then, what I believe that these are people who are in their silo. DC is a big fat silo, much like Ottawa in Canada is a big fat silo where even the conservatives sit around and say, everything's going hunky-dory in Canada. We've got nice healthcare here. We get good food and we get nice lodging. And so everything must be equally as good for everyone in Canada. They live in a political, economic, ideological silo. And that's as true in DC as it is anywhere else. And it might be even more true. So that's why he needs the voices out there. Not that people say, he's corrupt, he's a traitor, and now I'm going to criticize him for the sake of criticizing him. Mistakes are mistakes. And this is something that you have on the right that I don't think you have as much on the left, which is not
internal battles, internal fights.
I'm trying to think of. I have to be fair. Actually, there have been a lot of internal fights between like the Schumer, the old guard, and the progressive revolutionaries. But that's only. But people still fall into line much more easily on the left than on the right.
You say that, but like Trump, right? Like what we're talking about right now is a man who had unprecedented. He beat back and wrestled the party from its old owners and became the head honcho, and by and large got his legislators in line. Now, there are times when they buck him, for sure. The Epstein files is an example of that. But that's true of the Democrats as well. I mean, there are Democrats who defected to vote for Trump's CR. They defected to vote for the Lake and Riley Act. So I think that there's defections on the Democrats occasionally. But here's what my point is. I think all of these instances, again, from the MAGA perspective, are the worst possible time for the future of the party. Why? Because I don't think you can deny it. There is a war, a civil war internally to pick up the soul of MAGA, what it means, what is the identity of it once Trump is out of the scene. And right now, I think the most energetic, the most the group that is most able to capture, again, the energy and spirit of MAGA currently, and this I view to be a problem, I don't know what your take will be, is Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. He is gaining notoriety, and he's gaining public press. He's never been more influential. And there doesn't seem to be a coherent alternative that is structured around an ideology, a person that is able to combat that influence. And instead, I have people who, I think people like Pisco, Ban, and others are trying to integrate it and trying to make some sort of explanation that will align Trump not so directly against the Groypers, incorporate them, but ultimately I see the Groypers gaining power, and it's these instances, these inconsistencies, these hypocrisies, these screw-ups that are going to give Fuentes more power. And are you worried about that, and what do you think of that assessment?
Let me just ask you this, and I'm not asking the question of followers for the sake of social media clout. How many followers or people do you think Nick Fuentes has the ear of? And I would say like voting age Americans.
1.5 million, total guess.
Okay, let's even say it's 1.5 million. That is in terms of what matters for swaying an election. I think it's vocal on the internet but insignificant on the battlefield. And I think the issue is you're describing part of the problem, but you're emphasizing because it's the the convenient thing to do to place more value or to place more threat on Fuentes. The issue is not that Fuentes gains more power, that he can sway elections. That's nonsense. I do agree that the constant debating over Fuentes is the normalizing of Fuentes and the mainstreaming of him. The issue is the gain of notoriety of Fuentes is indicative of a broader problem, which is alienating the coalition that got Trump elected the second time. The Tucker Carlsons, who I think are exponentially more influential than Nick Fuentes. The populist Kennedy base, or the Kennedy coalition, the MAGA coalition got Trump elected. The Tulsi Gabbard's coming. So what you're describing, but placing the emphasis on Fuentes, is a fractioning, or what's the word I'm looking for? A fracturing of the base, which is what's going to allow for a coalescing on the left to actually win the election. But it's not Fuentes as an individual. It's not Fuentes as a creator. Fuentes, he's enjoying the limelight right now because he's never been more relevant. But he's not relevant for the purposes of national elections and the outcomes of national elections. But him, with Tulsi Gabbard's faction joining, with RFK Jr.'s faction joining, and with all of them tuning out because we see Pam Bondi seemingly bending over backwards to allow Pfizer to continue its nonsense, you'll lose MAGA. Then you seem to have Kash Patel at odds with Tulsi Gabbard, so you'll lose Tulsi Gabbard's support. Then you go after Marjorie Taylor Greene and you alienate her massive populist base, and you go after Thomas Massie, the bluest of blood Americans. That's how it happens. It's not Fuentes is a symptom of the political miscalculation. They still have time to coalesce, and the sooner the infighting comes to an end, the better. And then we didn't mention Candace Owens, but Fuentes is not the determinant element. He's a symptom of what I think are bad political decisions, where you have the party, when you gain power, all of a sudden they say, like, everyone fall into line. Forget discussion, forget discord, forget freedom of speech, forget healthy dissent. Fall in line, because this is the only way we maintain power. That's not how it works. It's not how it's ever worked, and that's why it ebbs and flows. The problem is when it ebbs and flows back to open borders and legalizing illegals to vote and basically creating a one-party state. There's no flowing back from that, barring armed social conflict. So, but no, Fuentes. I mean, like I don't. He's obviously he's a shit memeing. What is it called? Shit posting.
Shit post. Yeah.
He's a shit posting edgelord. He's got some good points mixed in with his idiotic statements. And he's never been more popular because he's been demonized to the point where everyone's like, well, shit, if they're demonizing him like this, maybe he's got something really legitimate to say. But anybody saying, Stalin was a good dude or Hitler wasn't as bad as everybody makes him out to be, that's the shit posting part. The other part, which
you don't think he's sincere about that? You don't think he's? I think Fuentes is, and this is not me praising him because I would prefer Trump over Fuentes. I'm saying that right now. I'm not praising him. I think Fuentes is much more sincere than any Republican commentator that I see. He speaks. Yeah. He speaks plainly. He speaks plainly. And the problem I feel and you're not the worst case of it, but everyone else, it feels like, in the MAGA influencer circle is walking on eggshells, including, but not limited to, J.D. Vance and Trump themselves. They won't condemn Fuentes because they're scared. And the influencers are scared. They're scared of their own audiences, the pushback. They're scared of the lash of Trump. And so they walk this kind of line. When it comes to criticizing Trump, they say, oh, he has bad people around him, anything to minimize it because they don't want to get hit by Trump. And they want to see who's on the edge here. But they're also scared of their own base, and they're scared of Fuentes. Fuentes, for all his faults, and I'm going to stress again, I think he's worse than Trump. He's an ideologue. I think he is sincere. For all his faults, he speaks plainly, and he speaks as though he's not afraid. And I sense the fear in all of these Republican commentators to speak plainly, speak what's on their mind. And I think that maybe won't sway a general election. I actually think that if Fuentes were to take control, the Democrats would perform better in elections. Although I'm worried for other reasons that he could still take power. Yeah.
It speaks plainly and sincerely. There's when I guess when people say, well, why does Hitler get disproportionately demonized compared to Stalin, Mao when they've killed more people? That's a legitimate point. But if anybody's were to say, like, Hitler was good or Stalin was good, or they had, I guess they had some good policies. The trains ran on time. But imagine, like, I don't know that anybody's ever said, look, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris has to disavow Destiny or Hassan Piker. Like, these are shit posting meme lords on the internet. They have a good audience. They've got an
I hear that all the time. I just want to pause real quick because that point, it's a salient point because I do hear that. And it was with Mamdani. It was a question during the debate about condemning Hassan. It was with Obama. Obama had to condemn, like, his pastor.
Did Mamdani condemn Hassan?
He condemned what Hassan said, just to be clear. But you won't. Would you think you'll get Trump saying, if someone were to ask, do you condemn when Nick Fuentes said this thing about Stalin? He's going to say something like, listen, I don't want to, he can say
what he says, I don't even know what the fuck he said because I don't care what Nick Fuentes.
You should care because you're going to be hearing a lot more from him.
Well, but especially with the likes of you and the mainstream media and Pierce Morgan.
I don't want to promote this person. I don't.
First of all, then I mean, the one show I'm not going to say ignore because I'm not talking about canceling, but, like, all right, people say stupid things and he has some good points. So address the points without vilifying the individual, because when you vilify the individual, it is the Streisand effect where they say they're trying to silence me because they can't respond to my ideas. I can respond to every one of Fuentes' ideas. I don't think people need to actively condemn every stupid statement that shit posting meme lords on the internet have to say. Women like getting raped. If you ask me to condemn that, you're the idiot, because normal people don't need to condemn stupidities. And when you force normal people to condemn abject stupidities, you actually elevate the idiots who said the abject stupidities.
So then, it's funny you say that because maybe we'll have a point of agreement. I abhor anti-Semitism, just to be clear about that. And Dave Portnoy, I hear the other day, because someone did something important. They went up to him and said something crazy about Jews and, like, threw money at him or threw coins at him. And Dave Portnoy, though, says something like, how many Jews have to die before you guys stop saying these anti-Semitic jokes? This coming from a guy who was saying, you deserve to be raped, saying all the stuff he said about black people, going so anti-woke. People don't buy the hypocrisy. We're in a new era of a version of woke Republicans who now all of a sudden, they want to put in censorship codes. They want to ban people. They want to, for example, kick people out because of what they have to say about Israel or because they're un-American with their immigration policy and check people's social medias when they're doing these kinds of adjustments of status. And so I think that blatant rank hypocrisy among the people who said, hey, you shouldn't censor. Now there are no tools at the disposal of who else would assume the mantle of MAGA to properly inoculize the leadership structures, not necessarily the voting base, but the people who are the writers of legislation, the advisors, that group of people. They're all, like, kind of Groyper adjacent, and you saw the text messages from the people. They talk like him. Even Charlie Kirk, who that is a big loss for the future of MAGA being anti-Groyper, the fact that he was murdered and assassinated in this horrific fashion. Even Charlie Kirk, he was having to acknowledge certain arguments that Fuentes was saying, and you could tell in his rhetoric, because I listened to America First with Fuentes, and I watched Charlie Kirk, and you could tell his arguments were more aligning with some of the things that Fuentes was saying. And so that's where the energy, I feel like, is. And the tools to fight it are what are the tools? Who's the next leader? Who's going to fight against this Groyperism?
Well, I don't know, but here's I'll state the obvious. If you don't want to end up with a Nick Fuentes, don't murder the Charlie Kirks. So you might end up living with, you might end up reaping what you sow, lefties.
But I condemn that shit.
Well, again, I don't, I don't ask that people condemn murder, because I think it pretty much goes without saying. But that being said, when you have people overtly affirming the the trans genocide, if you refuse to partake in it, that is what you are ushering in, whether you like it or not, or whether you care to admit it or not. Maybe not you per se, but you don't want to end up with the Nick Fuentes, then don't kill the Charlie Kirks, and that's a pretty decent rule. When it comes to there was something you said about freedom of speech.
Yeah, the potential hypocrisy of Portnoy coming out and being like, "How many Jews?" Yeah.
I'm not gonna get in trouble. Portnoy's a jackass. Okay, like, first of all, I said, like, fuck the Jews, dude. You could say that all day long. The only thing I said with that incident is throwing coins and it's not because they're throwing coins. Throwing anything at an individual is no longer speech.
Of course, of course.
Hey, and then people are like, well, he rolled them on the ground. I don't know how he rolled the coins. But
that's whatever it is.
You throw gravel at Justin Trudeau, you are no longer using speech, you are using actions. And he could have said, l'chaim, and throw the coins. And you throw but Portnoy he's got his hang up on the Jewish question, on the Israel question. Michael Rappaport, I'm not familiar with him. He's double standard on the Jewish stuff.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
You could say foul things about anybody on earth, but then say fuck the Jews, and then you flip out and it's genocide. No more genocide than saying, there are only two sexes. But no, look, the reality is Fuentes has influence, but whether or not that translates, do I see him being the leader of the Republican Party anytime soon? No, but if people keep up what they're doing, they might literally make him the leader of the next generation. You got a number of other people in the middle who
the fact that that's plausible, right? The fact that it's plausible.
No, I don't think it's plausible. I mean, I think you're going to get JD Vance, you're going to get a Marco Rubio. That's plausible. It's not. I don't think it's plausible that Nick Fuentes.
I'm not saying he will become president. What I think might happen is he will get influence if this path continues, because.
But the thing is, he might get influence. He's not wrong on everything. So he might not get influence on the fact that Stalin was a good dude, but he might get influence on America should abide by Christian values, and it should have a strict policy of immigration where assimilation or you're out. I mean, he might get influence on issues where he might be right.
And you don't think that's so you don't think it's necessarily negative that he is getting influence if he's right on certain.
But I don't. You say it's his influence. I think it's the influence of the ideas, which are not inherently flawed ideas. I'm not going to say as a Jewish person. I'm Jewish. I lived in Quebec, in Montreal. If you don't want to speak French, don't live in the province of Quebec. It's very simple. Don't come to Quebec and then demand that they acknowledge English on an equal basis with French or another language which is neither the official language of Canada. That's bottom line courtesy when you go to live in another country. And so the idea that Fuentes' ideas are they're not his ideas. That he might be a vocal spokesperson to get them out in the ether doesn't mean that you're validating Fuentes as a human as opposed to addressing his legitimate concerns and legitimate ideas for how a country should be run. The ultimate irony is that, I don't know if there was a whole Destiny Fuentes rumor, and I don't know if it's true. He's definitely the irony of a man who's quarter Mexican praising Hitler, who probably would have had him on the same trains as the blacks, the Jews, and the gypsies and the handicaps. I mean, there's irony there. But you're not legitimizing Fuentes as an individual by acknowledging that some of the ideas that he espouses are shared by a number of people, conservative and I would even say some Democrats alike. You come to America, you espouse American values, you speak the language, you contribute to society, because otherwise, immigration without assimilation is invasion. That's not a Nick Fuentes idea. And the fact that he says that along with Stalin had some good ideas doesn't mean that his Stalin had good ideas is a more valid idea because one of his other ideas is valid.
You have a few people among the Republican leadership, you would say cultural leaders, members of Congress, etc. Here I'm talking about Ben Shapiro. I'm talking about Ted Cruz, Mark Levin, others who are openly talking about needing to inoculate the Republican Party, not throw it into the hands of the Groypers. What do you think of that conflict? Who should win? Should they join hands and understand?
Have you seen what Mark Levin posts on
Mark
Twitter?
Levin, yeah, it's pretty insane.
He's a lunatic. What, I'm
Yes.
going to listen to Mark Levin lecture me about the morality of Nick Fuentes? I swear to you, I fell across Levin's tweets where he was, I mean, every response was your mama. And I thought he got hacked. Ben Shapiro is the one who had, he's an intellectual and he's smart. You can't disagree. Inoculate against the Fuentes. That's a one surefire way to have people say, "Holy crap! Look at what Levin and look at what Shapiro are trying to do." This is the influence that Fuentes himself is warning about. But and Ted Cruz, I won't touch Ted Cruz. But Levin, if Levin wants to write off Fuentes because of some of the hyperbolic things that he said, well, prepare to live by that sword as well. Go look at Levin's Twitter feed. It's the Twitter feed of a lunatic. And I say that as someone who I acknowledge people can look at my Twitter feed and say, "My goodness, he's too screws." But so forcing people to choose is the easiest way to fracture, and it's the easiest way to actually further legitimize the guy that you're trying to cause people to dissociate from. I think it's a losing tactic. I think Ben Shapiro will understand that. And then the other thing is, in the battle of social media, for the battle of attention and the attrition of attention, you have people fighting their own respective battles for reasons that might be a little bit more personal than broader national policy. And so, without getting into the conflict between the battle for relevance between influencers or commentators, there's that element at play as well. But Fuentes is who he is. He says dumb things. He says smart things. He's charismatic and he's bombastic. And but for the fact that everybody's been forcing him into the limelight and forcing people to make a decision as though it was even a decision they ever had to make, they have successfully legitimized and mainstreamed Nick Fuentes. So congratulations, all your bitching and moaning and fear mongering.
It's our fault. It's our fault.
It's brought about the exact outcome that you purported to not want in the first place. So, why is it, incidentally, that Fuentes has achieved this sort of political relevance where Destiny has?
I'll tell you why. Well, this is why. Because I think, one, the vacuum, the power vacuum that's been established by a movement that has eviscerated anything approaching an ideological core, where the only thing that unites this coalition together is the whims, or there's other things as well, but loosely, it's not neoconservatism, it's not fiscal conservatism, it's not a policy agenda, really. It's by and large the whims of the president. And if Trump decided that tariffs need to come all off, everyone would be a free market, make trade deal type person. The tariff example, I think, is the best distillation of how totally unmoored to an ideological center, to a institutional center, and that has all been eviscerated. And when there is nothing to connect these various different groups together, no ideological through line and no institutional through line other than allegiance to Trump, who can be the biggest Trump dick suck. Go look at the press conferences. Go look at the cabinet meetings where Trump can't even stay awake for them half the time. They're just praising him so much. It leaves behind a power vacuum for when Trump inevitably leaves. And this is the issue with a Trump administration, again, from the perspective of MAGA. Everyone is planning for the day after. Everyone is planning for what comes next. JD Vance, Rubio, they're all together, like planning for their future. There is no clear succession here. And because of that, it leaves room for people like Fuentes who is charismatic, Fuentes who does have a set of interlocking political beliefs on which he tries to stay consistent and which he demands consistency, and he's predictable in a way that the MAGA supporters aren't on policy, right? You can predict what Fuentes is going to say about a given issue. He's going to blame Israel. He's going to blame influences. Maybe he's going to take a hardline stance on immigration. But that's not true of the typical MAGA dick suck influencer or their politicians. And because of that power vacuum, I think, and because of his inherent charisma and dedication and patience, I think that there's much more room for someone like Fuentes to grow on the right than it is for someone like Destiny to grow on the left, where it's hard. There's a crowding out effect on the left because I think the Democrats, there's plenty of people who define the scope of the Democratic Party in terms of what their policy set are, in terms of what their interest is. But right now, I think the MAGA base and the Republican Party, there is this feeling of anxiety of what comes next. Trump is getting old. Trump is term limited. He might try to do a third run, all that kind of shit, but the odds of him sticking around, both from a biological perspective, political perspective, and just from an electoral perspective, are slim to none after his term is over. And already the knives are coming out and the party is fracturing because everyone wants to see what's going on. That is a dangerous place right now for the party to be. And I, for one, would be more concerned about the future of the party. But you seem to think that everyone should get along. Everyone should be all together. But the problem is you guys have different visions about what the future should look like. That's my opinion.
Well, first of all, what you just described sounds much more like what happened with Biden in his last term, in terms of the knives are out and everybody seeing the writing on the wall and jockeying for their own political futures. But what you described also might just be politics.
No. That's a good point to show you that the Democrats were clear on the mission. The mission was to defeat Trump in that moment, and so they were able to do the smart thing in that moment and put a knife in Biden's back, which was deserved because Biden was being a selfish prick asshole. And to put it aside, that's a sign of like a more healthy state, a party that's reflecting more and self-conscious about what they want. In a way, the Republican Party right now is a chicken with a head cut off, and everyone seems scared. I smell the fear, Viva. I smell it. I smell it in all the tweets.
But you might be smelling it because your nose might be broken as well. Pisco. What I see is a healthy disagreement among the right that might be the source of the fracturing of the coalition. But look, whether or not you're right, you're describing politics, especially in a lame duck or second last term presidency. And JD Vance might be playing it the best. He'll play the middle ground. He'll court the Groper vote without having to, for no reason, disavow the entirety of the movement because they've got legitimate concerns. And he can be the more reasonable alternative between a Fuentes or a war whore like an alternative rhino war whore other than JD Vance. But no, look, at the end of the day, what you're describing is politics, and everybody is jockeying and jostling for their day in the sun when the king retires, and then long live the king.
I'm conscious of your time. I want to be respectful of it. I know.
I didn't realize it was 9:50.
Yeah.
Let me go see the chat here. Let me see here. Does this guy just think everything is politics? Says JD and on. In the context of politics, what did I just do here?
Yeah, you're good.
In the context of politics, it is politics. What are you gonna argue? It's hard. First of all, it should be morality. It should be principles, and I think it is with some. But I just disagree with your characterization. It's not everybody falling in line with Trump. And what we're seeing is people falling out of line as you're describing it. And then the fighting that comes with Marjorie Taylor Greene falling out of line. So on the one, you say everybody's following in line. On the flip side, there's fracturing because there's infighting. So you're describing mutually incompatible things here.
I don't think they're incompatible because I think the way of following Trump has been the de facto standard, with some exceptions. There's always exceptions that prove the rule. There are always like specific areas where one or two Republicans might call out or whatever. But I think what's happening now is much more uncertainty, much more anxiety. What's happening now, I think, is a little bit different. And we're starting to see, again, uncertainty among the people. Conscious of your time, I want to shift from the MAGA Civil War, if that's okay, just for a moment, for you to hear my affirmative case right now. Trump's fucking up humongously. To the extent that there are fractures in his party, they're his fault. And I don't agree with your characterizations of the causality here. It's not because Charlie Kirk was killed that Fuentes is rising, though I think it's potentially contributed to it. I think it's because the Republicans have made their bed and are going to lie in it. They've promoted conspiracy. They've promoted thinking that we'll always try to think of another explanation, not to follow the official line. That's why if it comes out that the Epstein files, that there's no other third parties or Democrats implicated, they're not going to believe it. You won't believe it, and your entire side won't believe it because you've been convinced that the damning stuff of the people you're talking about, not just damning of some people, but of the specific peoples and a broader set of interests, that is considered dogma among the Republican Party. And it's that style of thinking and that inculcation of a credulous, closed system of thought that is the direct line of the Republicans. I'll keep going, but it sounded like you want to get in there.
Well, because I want to pull out the Billy Madison meme. What you just said is the most insanely idiotic thing I've ever heard. What conspiracies do Republicans promote? Like, give me one.
Sure. The notion that, for example, the Democrats are all protecting a group of pedophiles to suck their adrenochrome out of their skulls. The QAnon people, that's one such example. The election theft conspiracy, which not existent, the 2020 election theft. The conspiracy related to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, the notion that Joe Biden did something improper with respect to the Hunter Biden stuff. We can keep going all day. The Epstein files as presented,
Said three that were already wrong. Like, okay, you're saying there's no Joe Biden, Hunter Biden conspiracy.
Well, maybe that should be an indication of why? What the problem is? The problem is nobody trusts anything. There's no trust.
Let's go back to the election. You're telling me, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this last time, that the 2020 election was not interfered with?
Yeah, the 2020 election was a free and fair election.
It was a free and fair election. Did they suppress the Biden laptop story?
Who's they?
Well, did intelligence via social media suppress the Hunter Biden laptop?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Well, at least we know where we disagree with.
Yeah, okay.
I agree that they did, and that in and of itself is election interference.
Okay, if you say so. If you say so, but
let's go to the conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
You do agree, as a matter of fact, depending on where they flew, that Bill Clinton flew on that plane internationally over a dozen times. We agree on that?
Yes. Okay. I don't know the exact number. And
I think allegations without Secret Service to Africa with Bill Gates, and alleged improprieties from people on the inside of what they saw on that plane that caused them to never want to be Secret Service or never want to be
it's all vague, no smoking gun. What I'm trying to say is, as presented, we don't have proof of these things. And if there are no explicit accounts, and if the smoking gun proof for these particular individuals, again, I'm not saying that there's nothing to hide there. I'm not saying there's nothing that we don't want these files released. I support full transparency. And I think that
you've seen the Bill Clinton getting a deep tissue massage by Virginia Giuffre.
I see that that's an allegation from Virginia Giuffre. And but by the way, Virginia Giuffre made a lot of allegations against, for example, Dershowitz at one point. Do you think Dershowitz did something wrong?
Dershowitz was never on an island. Dershowitz was at the Mar-a-Lago place on mainland America. And whether or not, saying I kept my underwear on is not the best defense for social media.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about.
But hold on. You know what photograph I'm talking about? It's actual Virginia Giuffre giving Bill Clinton a nice back massage.
I'm not sure if I recall the specific. I don't know the Prince Andrew one where he's wrapped around Virginia Giuffre with his hand.
What you're basically saying is so ludicrous that, barring a video of Bill Clinton doing video, and which you still wouldn't believe, him flying on a convicted sex offender's plane privately to over 19 times overseas is not.
Would you vote to convict based on those facts of rape?
Well, convict for what? No, I mean, that's
so you admit there's no, at least as the evidence is presented, is not one that you would convict Bill Clinton for.
In a criminal court, no. Part of a conspiracy of improprieties with sex offenders, yes. But you're saying, well, so barring a criminal conviction, then there will be never a conspiracy that'll be confirmed.
No, I'm not saying that either. The thing is, the allegations are such that, like, Clinton was being blackmailed by Epstein because he did engage in sexual relations with underage people.
You're dealing with things which are fundamentally theories of people based on the evidence.
Correct.
But that's not a conspiracy. You say conspiracy theory to write it off. When a president is flying on a plane privately with a sex offender, with young people on that plane, when there's a photograph of him getting a back massage by one of the sex victims of Epstein, we're no longer dealing with baseless beliefs. When you have Stacey Plaskett texting Jeffrey Epstein during congressional hearings as to what blackmail dirt she can get in terms of questions.
I can say this stuff about Trump. When you're best friends with someone who has this kind of shit going on, when you lie about him being a member of the club and being kicked out of the club, when you go ahead for it.
Give me one.
Give me one what?
Well, did he lie about kicking Epstein out of his club?
Yes, he did.
How?
He was never a member. Prove he was a member. Prove that he was kicked out.
Prove that he was kicked out. Hold on. Give me about 2 seconds to see.
He says he was kicked out.
Okay. Did Trump kick Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago? I mean, I don't. Again, it won't be good for me because I don't trust AI. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein's membership at Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago Club was closed in 2007. Effectively.
No, this is according to Trump. Trump says it, but there's no proof that he was ever a member.
The links, I have to go check the links now. Are in PBS, NPR. So
that's the Trump spokesman's statement. But yeah, just like Bill Clinton's statements say he didn't do anything wrong. But you would never credit those self-standing conclusory statements from Clinton, but you will for Trump.
No, dude, you just said that there's no evidence, and now you're saying, well, the evidence is just a statement. But we'll get the internet will figure it out. Did Trump bar Epstein from Mar-a-Lago?
I have no evidence of that.
Okay, because you'd be barring a video of him doing it.
No, I mean, show a document, show anything, show someone under oath. Go for
Okay,
it.
show someone under oath. Okay, so we agree. We'll let the internet figure that one out. I think you're wrong. If I'm wrong,
Okay,
I'll have.
but the whole point is not on the file specifically. It's on the kind of closed system of thought that if the goods are not produced with respect to the Epstein files or with respect to any of these incidents to the satisfaction of the people, they will think that there is corruption. If there is not smoking gun proof released in these Epstein file disclosures, you guys will say that they covered something up because you've already made the determination that there's guilt there.
As far as I'm concerned, there's already sufficient evidence to conclude that there's guilt there. So, there's sufficient evidence to conclude there's guilt there. But the flip side is, I mean, this is Rich coming from a side that is trying to convince everybody that Trump is a pedophile because of his relationship with Epstein. But I'm not sure where this part's going. Because
No. Where I'm going is not to talk about this specifically. Is my kind of liberal critique of the state of our country and where Trump bears responsibility. I think basically he bears responsibility for having this fractured coalition, which might lead to Groypers having more influence in the Republican Party, which I take to be a bad thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's bad.
Or it might lead to Democrats winning 2026 and 2028 and impeaching and convicting Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth.
Well, I think that would be good.
No, and of course you do. You guys didn't get it. You didn't get to do it the first time, and you didn't have a basis to do it the first time. And maybe now you might even have a basis.
They're not going to get the votes in the Senate, so he's going to be fine on impeachment.
Well, until 2028, and then we'll see. But the bottom line is, look, I might agree with you. Some of these mistakes are by and large a part of Trump's miscalculations. Him coming out, whoever came out and put out the tweet, I got my flu shot and COVID booster. If they didn't know how that was going to resonate with the base, Trump should know that, and these are mistakes that he has to correct course on.
But it's not just that; it's the economy. People don't trust him anymore on the economy. Why? Because his policy makes. Yeah,
you're not wrong. People don't believe the numbers that they're being fed, especially when they've been told that the numbers can't be trusted. So you're right, and they don't trust what they're being told that defies their own eyes. And this is something I talk about on the channel. You can only tell people things are good for so long when they say they're not any better. They might not be worse, but they're not good, and it's not a booming economy that we're being told.
It's not an impressive presidency.
Not yet, and which is why he's got to start busting ass if he doesn't want to lose the midterms badly, and if he doesn't want to lose 2028 and cost J.D. Vance his political career as a future president of these United States of America. We agree on that. Then the only question is, you don't want to help him get there, and I do, because I don't want to see the likes of AOC.
Well, it depends. It depends. I don't want Trump to succeed on stuff that I think is bad. But here's some differences, right? I think the tariffs are horrible for the American people. And I think that the longer the tariffs are there, that it's going to help the Democrat election odds. Notwithstanding that, I'm saying that the Supreme Court should undo them because I think they're illegal, even though that was probably going to help Trump politically. Same thing on healthcare. I think I would support Democrats passing a Trump proposal on the expansion of Obamacare subsidies if it's going to help the American people, and the Democrats would vote for it too. So in that respect, I want him to succeed for the sake of the country. He just doesn't have the character or the inclination to do things that are going to help the American people. That's just always been the problem.
I don't think the tariffs are a bad thing. I think that they are the short temporary pain to force America to become independent and not reliant on China and India for medications and rare earth minerals. But I do agree that the courts are probably going to adjudicate that his application of tariffs was not justified under the Emergencies Act that he was applying them with. This is where it's interesting. Like, you almost agree. And it's interesting, if they strike them down, I don't think they're going to strike them down in any meaningful sense. It's going to force a reimbursement. They're going to basically leave a window open for a congressional
That would be fucked up though, right? Because it would be fucked up for the government to benefit from an illegal tax. Why the fuck would we be okay with that?
It wouldn't be illegal if they give Congress the ability to remedy. Then they would just make it legal. It's a reality of law. The government's not, the courts are not going to issue a ruling that's going to bankrupt a country. And
I'm just where are the libertarians gone, right? Like, assuming that the court would rule, okay, they're illegal.
The libertarians were gone the second they were justifying lockdowns and COVID shots. Oh, by the way, who's this guy's a huge actor, said Cal 4837. Interesting. I did it again. I keep hitting the camera. Yeah. This I won't make fun because people don't know. And first of all, I don't care if you call me an anti-vaxxer. I might never get another shot again. I got 2 of those COVID shots, so that's one hell of an anti-vaxxer right there.
Ooh.
But by the way, if you're still taking boosters, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I'll outright, you're an idiot. Unless you're not, even if you're a 95-year-old geriatric.
Not even.
If you are a middle-aged anybody and you're still taking boosters, you're politically retarded. And
politically, wait. Politically or scientifically?
No, politically retarded. but I don't know. Keep taking them. You might get scientifically retarded as well. No, I'm first of all, like I don't even call me an anti-vaxxer. Like it's as stupid as calling me an anti-Semite, which I've also been called. So it's stupid names.
Who calls you an anti-Semite?
I get called Nazis all the time because I was mildly skeptical of how October 7 occurred the way it did.
Oh, really?
Pierce Morgan blocked me on Twitter.
Why?
After suspecting I was an anti-Semite because he said anybody promoting that October 7 was an inside job is an anti-Semite or promoting even worse serious. Like, first of all, I never said it was an inside job, but if you're not asking standard, skeptical questions, Pierce, you're an idiot. And then lo and behold, fast forward 2 years, Pierce Morgan, what's his name? Pierce Morgan is asking the same questions I was asking,
and platforming Nick Fuentes. So he clearly thinks that you are more dangerous than Nick Fuentes.
No, he thinks that Nick Fuentes has a bigger audience than I do, and he's got more to gain from platforming another, having another Jerry Springer shit show on his show. I mean, that's good for him. It's his business model, and for him, he's succeeding. I don't know how, that's his. I'm sure that's his thought process, and it's not mine. And I'm not confessing through projecting. He's like, oh yeah, well, Viva. He probably doesn't even know who I am, but he sees dollar signs and eyeballs by platforming Nick Fuentes. I would have a discussion with Nick because I don't find him to be quite as repulsive as Destiny. But I could be proved wrong.
Why do you find Nick less repulsive for Destiny? It's like personal stuff, or is it politically?
No, it was relishing in the death of innocence is not something that it's the same thing with Hassan Piker. You say certain things, and I don't know that Nick Fuentes has ever said, the women like to get raped, or want to get raped. These are just stupid things that I think people say, to trigger people on the internet. But Destiny vigorously, mocking the murder of Corey Comparator, and there's nothing to be gained ideologically, intellectually, spiritually from engaging in those types of discussions. Fuentes has legitimate political ideas, and plus I saw the way freaking Destiny argues with people. It's like there's no point. You couldn't even have a moderator that could sufficiently stop.
You don't think so? I think he's had some pretty decent moderated debates and unmoderated debates, and to address that.
He's got. I prefer having a discussion with you because in as much as you're still mildly sincere and steel manning the other idea because you're mildly honest. I think you're politically blinded.
But I appreciate the mild honesty. But I want to address what you just said about Destiny, because it had to do with his relishing of or joking about Corey Comparator death and the Charlie Kirk stuff and all those memes. And listen, I don't agree with that. I don't do it. I condemn the Charlie Kirk assassination. I will say what I think about Charlie Kirk. And I will not mince words, and I think that is fair. And everyone can say what they want about the dead in terms of politically, without. So I don't agree with those things. But come on, is this real? Is this really a standard you uphold for the right wing? Because you've heard all the comparison. Dave Rubin mocked the shit about the Paul Pelosi. Same thing with.
First of all, none of those are on par, and none of them are even accurate as far as I'm concerned. But there's. It's a purely individual, case by case scenario. I mean, I could think of people on the right. I could give you.
How about the George Droid memes? People who are like glorifying the death of George Floyd and doing the whole.
I don't agree with the glorifying the death, but I do believe that there were contributing factors to his death. I mean, I don't believe in So someone sent me a book. It was a George Floyd horror book, and people send me stuff. And I don't like that stuff. I mean, I don't even agree in relishing in the death of people who you think deserve it. When you say I'll condemn his death, but I'll say what I want to say about the dead. Well, when you're saying what you want to say about not the dead but the murdered, you say, well,
wait. But when you say that, when you say the murdered, you act as though I didn't call it murder. You act as though I didn't say he was assassinated.
Anybody who says, yeah, it's a terrible thing to the assassination and murder's wrong, but he was a racist. Fuck off. You know exactly what you're doing.
Well, hang on. I did not say that on day one. On day one, you can see my reaction. I just want to be clear to understand that I also think that there's a grace period where come on, we don't need to fucking do this right now. And a lot of people don't agree with me, by the way. A lot of people have on the left, they think that that's a cuck take. They think that's fucking pussy shit. But I offer that. But however, it would be cucked and wrong for us to be like, well, because he was killed, I should what? Pretend that I feel differently, do the kind of thing that Ezra Klein did and be like, Charlie Kirk did politics the right way if I don't feel that. If I really don't feel that, why would I have this pretense and lie to my audience about something I don't believe? And but by the way, if Biden died because of his cancer, you wouldn't say Biden, he did it the right way. He wasn't a fascist. He didn't do COVID fascism. You would maintain your criticisms if you're honest.
Why would I maintain my criticism in the wake of his death? I mean,
you would.
Historically or at his funeral? Like,
No, not at his fucking funeral. I mean, like, I'm gonna assume you're gonna get an invite. I'm not gonna get an invite. I called this part of his family corrupt and shit, so I'm not gonna get an invite. You're not gonna get one.
you're in we know what the context of the discussion is. It's like, yes, violence is bad, but I mean that's what terrorists say, and that's the exact rationale. Yes, violence is bad, but there's violence on both sides. Or yes, you shouldn't blow up people and slit their throats, but occupation is wrong. I mean, you know what you're doing. And when everybody says, well, I'm condemning it, but he should be buried in the history, the book, whatever Ilhan Omar said. Everybody knows what they're saying, and it's disgusting human filth.
Look at how they reacted to Dick Cheney. Look at how MAGA reacted to the death of Dick Cheney. And the left as well, by the way. Rest in piss. This guy's a war criminal.
But first of all, again, hold on. Now I launched the screen again. Shitting. I still don't agree with it, but saying, calling someone the devil after they die from natural causes is far different than calling someone the devil after they've been murdered for their speech. I mean, it's just contextually different. You appreciate
I understand. I understand that there's a difference there. That I think in the moment where there's a horrible crime, that's why I take issue with when you're like dead, as though it's a euphemism. No, I've called it assassination, murder, a crime, a vicious crime, a cowardly act. I've said all that stuff. That in that moment in the media, there ought to be solidarity. That's why I was so proud when Biden and all the Democrats condemned the attempted shooting of Trump during the election. And I stand tall on that. That said, that's
the wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
No, but this is your bullshit. So Tim Pool quote
violence on both sides. Bullshit. That's what it was.
This is fucked up. So in the wake of this National Guard shooting, where they shot the National Guard people, all these MAGA accounts were saying this is Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin's fault for radicalizing people by saying the military shouldn't follow orders, as though Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin are going to radicalize this Afghan national. Before we even know he's an Afghan national, everyone's lying. I'm saying you should be pissed at all these liars who are claiming to know things that they don't know. Tim Pool quote tweets me and says, Peace was on the side of the shooter. That is bullshit. When I'm calling out lies, whenever I'm trying to stay true to principles,
I don't know what.
Okay, you can't speak on it, but
all that I know is Alyssa Slotkin, former CIA, comes out and says, defy illegal orders. The National Guard's going to be shooting citizens in the streets. I'm very concerned. And 2 weeks later, a former CIA elite unit in Afghanistan shoots two National Guard.
So you actually buy this? You actually buy that she, with that video, and Mark...
I have publicly said that she has blood on her hands.
How the fuck do you figure? How the fuck do you figure?
I can exactly tell you how I figure. If they have their operatives who are looking to their political leaders for the permission slip to defend themselves against existential threats of National Guardsmen who are there illegally, who Alyssa Slotkin comes out repeatedly says are going to start shooting citizens, and then you have a guy who was quite clearly mentally unstable to begin with, who's a former CIA elite unit asset in Afghanistan, who's been brought here by the Democrat Biden regime, now listening to his handlers.
And offered asylum by Trump.
That's a separate issue. I mean, first of all that you did there is to say everything you just said is true, but he got asylum after a process in April before he got radicalized.
By the Trump executive branch.
So that's your actus novus, that's your intervening act.
I think it is an intervening act. If you're going to go for it.
When did Alyssa Slotkin put out her PSA?
Fucking days before. I don't know. But hang on a second. So,
you're like a month before.
No, but you're
saying going to be blood in the streets and it's going to escalate.
She didn't say it in those terms. She did not say it in those terms. She said, "I'm worried." Wait, no. But you acknowledge this. You acknowledge this. If we have National Guard people on the streets, there increases the potential risk of something happening to them, and you better make sure they're there for a good purpose because you're assuming that risk. That is not calling for the death of people, and you try to conjoin this statement and the one about the. It's stupid.
And if you have young ladies wearing short skirts at bars,
oh come on, no. But hang on. Wait, no, Viva. You would know if someone said, if you said to your daughter, don't go to this part of town because it's risky. Don't wear those like nice jewelry. Would you be say if you did that as a cautionary thing and you say, I'm scared about this happening because you're in the bad part of town? Do you think that's you condoning if something happens? Yes or no?
You've absolutely misframed it like a dishonest individual, which is to say, if I send my daughter to the bad part of town, as if my daughter's law enforcement, whose job it is to enforce the law. So, I mean, it's not.
You made that connection, Viva. You just did that analogy.
say that if I send her to a bad part, then how about if she was just walking the streets at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in a skirt and somebody did something? You've imputed the guilty portion on her already to suggest that she was asking for it.
I'm just following the analogy that you put forward and saying something.
The analogy was, you said if they weren't on the streets, they wouldn't have gotten shot.
No, I'm trying to characterize in good faith, not in bad faith, what Alyssa Slotkin was saying. Alyssa Slotkin wasn't saying, I think that these National Guard people are going to just murder people, and that's why I think that they're sent there. That is the bullshit.
She said a number of things, and I tweeted them out, and one of them went, was one of the one that was viewed, where a month earlier she said something's going to happen and it's going to spiral out of control. That was 2 weeks before, this guy shot the people.
So you wouldn't debate Alyssa Slotkin the same way you wouldn't debate Destiny because she has blood on her hands.
No, because she didn't afterwards say, yeah, I have no sympathy for anybody.
But your belief is it's wink, wink, nod, nod. You think she's happy about it.
I don't think that she's happy about it, but I do think that she's partly responsible for it.
Okay, if she's not happy about it, then did she want it to happen?
I don't care whether or not she wanted it to happen.
Surely you do. A wink, wink, nod, nod isn't a wink, wink, nod, nod in that way that you implied, unless she wants it to happen.
You didn't like the answer. I don't care what her motivation is. The outcome is the same. She contributed to it, in my view. Period. I don't care if she did it on purpose or by accident. I don't care if she's happy about it or she's not. When you speak rhetorically like that, you are ushering that in with a political permission slip for mentally ill people to go defend themselves against an existential threat of unlawful orders of DC guardsmen who are there illegally, who are going to shoot you and your family. And that's what she did, and that's what happened.
This is the horrific double standard. Say what you want to say about Destiny, and I disagree with a lot of what he says about the shootings and the violence and that kind of stuff. But the double standard that he's calling out, I think, is blatantly apparent right here. That we have insane statements being made by Republicans and MAGA all the time. We can go through all of them, all of the lies and existential risk that they're trying to say. Even on Mom Donnie, right?
I'd like one right now.
What's that? You'd like one?
I'd like one good example right now.
Yeah, sure. So the insane thing that Trump said, which was that these people should all be hanged for sedition, that they're seditionists.
He didn't say that. So already,
wait, hang on. Wait a second. But Alyssa Slotkin did not literally say, go out and do this. You had some inferences that you get to that.
But you see what you did? Like, you couldn't even accurately say what Trump said.
It is accurate.
Punishment for sedition is death. That's what he said.
No, but he said they're guilty of sedition. Then he retweeted that where he said the punishment for sedition is death. He says they're guilty of sedition. It doesn't take a rocket science to put one and one together. They are actually consistent. That is, he thinks that they did the thing and they should be punished for the thing with the punishment for the thing. And you act like that's a crazy inference to draw, as though it's not the direct thing he's trying to communicate.
I don't act like it's the crazy thing to draw. I'm just going to play along the same rationale, which is if you come out and say, all I was saying was you can defy illegal orders, I'm just saying the law.
Is that true?
Well, I'm going to play the same stupid game. All that Trump is doing is saying the law. And unfortunately, when you come out and you encourage former CIA assets who are mentally unwell to begin with to defend themselves against a manufactured existential threat to you and your family on the streets of your cities, that's what happens. And whether you like, we can agree to disagree on that. I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Because everyone loves using their hyperbolic rhetoric.
No, but you're not. By your own lights, you're not being consistent because you say.
No, I'm being entirely consistent. Either they're both wrong or they're both right. If you want to pull the argument, they're just citing the law. Well, then so is Trump.
You're saying the Democrats have blood in their hands, but not the Republicans. That's the inconsistency.
What I'm saying is Alyssa Slotkin has blood on her hands.
And Mark Kelly.
Mark Kelly maybe less so. He's not a former CIA handler. Alyssa Slotkin specifically because of specific multiple statements that she made. Mark Kelly maybe to a lesser degree. He knew damn well what he was doing. And the bottom line is there hadn't been a Republican killing and there wasn't a right-wing person killing someone in the wake of those statements. So it was a CIA asset who killed National Guardsmen who he thought to be there illegally and who he feared start shooting him and his family on the street.
We have no idea that that's what has actually motivated him. And I'll ask right now, would you condemn Trump, his statements about hanging them, the retweets and what he said about it? You won't. I know you won't.
In a vacuum, if it were the initial statement, absolutely. I would say this is probably, and I've said it before, that this is probably not the best rhetoric to use. In response to rub it in the face, you want to just cite the law? I'll cite the law, mother effers. You want me to condemn him citing the law in response to them just citing the law, and everyone's just pretending they don't know exactly what they're doing?
Yeah, no, I think that is an apology that's one conditional. It's conditional on what you think the absurdity is of the other side, and it doesn't interact with really the major difference in what's being said between those two parties. One of them is saying something that's true. That is to say, Alyssa Slotkin and Mark Kelly are saying true things that are.
And Trump's not?
Trump is saying false things in that they're not guilty of sedition. Even by your own lights, you said it's close to sedition. That means not sedition.
So guilty of sedition necessarily means a trial. So like I'm not adjudicating on the guilt of sedition offhand. But if we're doing this game, under the however it gets adjudicated, the punishment for sedition is death. Hardy har, we're all playing a good game here. The only difference is there's a dead National Guardsman and another one shot, and not the same can be said of the other side. There's a dead Charlie Kirk. There's a dead CEO of United Health, and we're noticing a trend, and it's not far right extremism.
Wait, it's because you guys memory hole all the other shootings. Or all the other death events, like the guy who was the white nationalist shooting up that grocery store that everyone makes the meme about, the Mormon guy, the guy that attacked the Mormon church with the car and the firebomb, that was all memory hold. You guys pick and choose which violent incidents you want to do, and you play them up, and you act as though the left is the only party that's violent. And even then, it's like the facts don't matter on those cases.
We might be getting into a broader one here in terms of how far back you go and whether or not what motivations we actually do attribute to that. But all that to say, Pisco.
Yeah,
this has been we've far exceeded.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here. You've been a good sport, and you were mostly on defense this entire time. I'm totally willing, at your pleasure, to put me on defense most of the time. I know that.
I like having my whatever you think my ideas are challenged. I don't think I was on the defense, and I don't. I think if I haven't justified my ideas to your audience, I don't think I have to. At the very least, I'm forced to justify them or rationalize them to myself, and I think I've adequately done that. Where I don't think it has been revealed now that I have an opinion that is manifestly untenable. And whether or not there's a double standard, I'll appreciate your argument on the double standard. Had Trump come out and just said the punishment for Democrat sedition is hanging, there's been a number of statements.
He said that.
But it's in response to. And so that's where he said, like, if you want to play the dumb game, we can play the dumb game. But the bottom line is, if we're just citing the law, we're just citing the law. But the bottom line also is, in the wake of them just citing the law and whipping up a manic, frantic anti-Trump base, they got two people to get shot. And we'll see what the motivation is. I don't really need a rocket scientist to tell me that a CIA asset, Afghan refugee who was brought here under Biden administration, who hears the words from his CIA handler, whether she's real or not, really his handler or not. This is what we call the political permission slip that leads to political violence. And the Charlie Kirk assassination was the political permission slip.
You believe Candace? You believe Candace?
About what?
Her ravings about how it's inside job from TPUSA and they're all built.
What I believe, it was a radical furry trans activist who couldn't, but I believe there was a group of them who couldn't address the ideas, and so they got the political permission slip to kill people extrajudicially.
But do you buy Candace Owens when she says it's like they're insiders from foreign countries, France, Israel?
About that's separate. That's Macron. I believe that Israel is in on it? Not until there's any lick of proof above and beyond, what internal fighting was going on as relates to donors. I can understand how people believe that based on the contemporaneous events of Netanyahu making some factually incorrect statements about Charlie Kirk, which can cause people to question things, and Charlie Kirk's internal strife with respect to donors. Until I see evidence that any Israeli intelligence was behind the actual shooting, I believe it was a group of radical whack jobs who disagreed with Charlie Kirk on the substance. But then you can get into who might have been motivating them, who might have been infiltrating the Discord chats in terms of doing, some sort of MK Ultra 2.0, finding people who are mentally unwell to begin with to manipulate into political action. Like what Alyssa Slotkin was doing by telling people you better defend yourselves now before they come and shoot you in the streets.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I really do. Hopefully we can have another chat in the future. And thank you again for agreeing to do this. Best to you, Nate the lawyer, the whole that LawTube sphere. Appreciate always the conversations that you guys have. I lovingly refer to you guys as the legal goobers. And I hope that you guys, continue to, have your platforms and we can talk more in the future.
Absolutely. Pisco. Have a good one.
Have a good one, brother. All right, folks. Little decompress. I'll talk about my thoughts. All right, my thoughts after that conversation. First of all, I sincerely thank you, Viva, for coming on. I mean that sincerely because it's hard these days to get conservatives to come on and engage and have these kinds of discussions. Was I more cordial than I am usually with like people who are in the VC waiting room and stuff? I would say yeah. I'm not as like domineering of the conversation. And I'm just going to be honest, in part that cordiality is so that people know that when I invite them on my show, I think it's different when I'm invited to do a debate by a third party, but when they come onto my platform, that they can actually have a conversation where they're allowed to sort of speak out, and I'll respond, in longer chunks as opposed to the kind of, I don't know what to call it, Socratic or cross-examination style that I sometimes do. But I hope that you don't confuse that cordiality by virtue of me being, the host, inviting the person on, to mean that I wasn't pressing and pushing for concessions, pushing to get him to acknowledge things. And that's exactly what I was doing. And I think anyone who sees, especially the first part of the conversation, where I'm getting him to go really explain the indefensible, even taking the MAGA position on, can see why I think that is effective. Laughable conclusions and benefits of the doubt that he'll give to the administration. Going so far as to say, I'm not going to call it corrupt until I know for certain that the Iranian strikes were not in the best interest for American foreign policy or something. When you would never get that, if imagine Biden, similar circumstances, we had these kind of entangled financial relationships with the Saudis, the Gulf people, it wouldn't even be a question. And then saying, for example, I really care about conflicts of interest. The reason Pam Bondi shouldn't be AG is because she has this conflict of interest with Pfizer. And I'm like, oh, you care about conflict of interest, don't you? Well, what about Trump's conflict of interest? Oh, well, that could just be smart. And because he was elected as opposed to appointed, conflicts of interest don't matter when you're elected. They do when you're appointed. Huh? Well, then the conflicts of interest of Vice President Biden, who was elected, don't matter, right? I mean, so I hope that was like just very apparent, the inadequate explanations throughout. But also, what I think is genuine from Viva is there is frustration. There is an inability to answer perfectly. And even when he said, this is not an impressive presidency, when I said that, he said, yeah, it's not yet. And for what I would consider a little bit of a MAGA cult, a MAGA cult, that is an admission of, even on MAGA's own lights, they are not getting what they expected. And that's kind of what I wanted to drill down on. Basically, on any issue, he pretty much conceded the economy, that they're totally irresponsible in the economy. I wanted to end on immigration, to end on the strong point of MAGA. And I always like to do this because people think that there's no way to answer these Trump has been successful in immigration points. I think that there are. It's a little harder from the perspective of MAGA. What I was doing for a lot of the debate was onboarding the MAGA priors and saying, even onboarding those priors, he still fails. It's a little harder with that, but I think it is possible. And certainly from a liberal perspective that cares about rights and the Constitution, all that stuff, it should be compelling to people who have a passing interest in that. So yeah, it's that's why and how I approach the conversation. I think that last part there on, I won't debate people who do that, who are laughing about death and all kinds of stuff with destiny conversation, etc., and the thing about Corey Competore and all that. I think that is just lays bare precisely the double standard that so many people are calling out. Is you have these unhinged statements, not just from streamers, influencers, or randos on TikTok, Twitter, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, but elected officials. In the case of Trump himself, in the case of all of his sycophants, in the case of Mike Lee, Utah senator. So I thought it was a perfect distillation of precisely what we're all calling out, this double standard in terms of the cordiality discourse, and not, the whole notion that he would be respectful of Joe Biden after he died. These guys don't give a fuck. They will piss on the graves of anyone they didn't like. And you know what? That not everyone has the standard I have, which I think it's a little, people will say it's cucked, that in the aftermath of, especially a wrongful killing, a murder or a crime, to, give a little grace, give a day before you, people will say that's cucked, and they don't agree with that, just to be clear. But that's just me personally, what I feel. But to act like you're, I really can't debate people who, dude, come on. And to say, for example, Alyssa Slotkin has blood on her hands, I don't think that she wanted that person to be killed. Okay, then in what sense would she be seditious? In what sense is she intentionally doing something? In what sense does she have blood on her hands if she doesn't intend for this to happen, he must think that the speech is inherently so dangerous. It's inherently so dangerous to say the military doesn't have a right to or follow illegal orders, or they have an obligation to avoid those, or they have a right not to follow them. That is such an inherently dangerous speech that I guess you don't have the same culpability rules that typically apply in these kinds of incitement cases. That it doesn't matter if you intended the bad consequence of your statements. If that's the case, then holy fuck, we can spread culpability everywhere, right? We can spread culpability to everyone who is hawking, as he hawks, a lot of these conspiracies. And you can tell they're genuinely believed. I mean, he's willing to draw a conclusion that Alyssa Slotkin has blood on her hands because this CIA person was like programmed to hear certain phrases and then go crazy. And is there any evidence for that? Same thing with the Bill Clinton stuff. You could say he himself admits in the case of a criminal law that he wouldn't convict. He was like, oh, that doesn't mean I won't think that it happened. Well, no, but if you wouldn't convict in the criminal sense, you think that there's a reasonable doubt as to whether or not Bill Clinton did this. If what you're saying is that the evidence is not there to convict beyond a reasonable doubt, you're saying there are reasonable doubts that one might have that would prevent them from drawing to that conclusion. Yet, is that how he portrays it? Likewise, on the stuff about the bomber, right? This is a situation where he is at odds with someone like Julie Kelly. Julie Kelly, who is an insane MAGA propagandist, legal commentator, just absolutely deranged. But they're fighting, right? And they're fighting because he thinks Julie Kelly is like wrong or inconsistent on a point. But then he says, I wouldn't want to be the Blaze TV who published this piece on the woman who they all accused of being a plant. But there's video of her at the time the bomb was planted, like petting a puppy. And he still thinks the jury's out about whether she's involved. And he's able to acknowledge that the evidence doesn't show that way. That's why he says, I'm glad I'm not the Blaze. He's acknowledging that. Notwithstanding that, he's not willing to discount the theory, and he's still pseudo-advocating it. And there's no apology. There's no apology for this woman. He's been like pushing this narrative, and there's no apology to her, and there won't be. If it's proven definitively, this guy from the Blaze TV is not going to apologize. I don't think Viva will apologize. And so I kind of like, I do interpersonally get along with these people, but you really need to understand the level of double standard here and the really like wild system of thought that is being promoted here. And that's what I was referencing with Trump, that he demands this of his audience, and the imposition of a closed system of thought where everything is a conspiracy has inevitably led to the situation in which now that they're in power, he's in this kind of Heisenberg uncertainty principle situation that Kash Patel is either corrupt or just like the craziest, stupidest person of all time at the head of the FBI, but it somehow gets to Trump, but he's not going to condemn Trump for keeping Kash Patel on, or indeed Pam Bondi. That it's possible that Trump isn't keeping a close eye on Pam Bondi and isn't knowledgeable about all the complaints that people have about Pam Bondi, and doesn't constantly say, like, I stand by Pam Bondi when he's asked a question about it, including when Pam Bondi said we need to go after hate speech. He reaffirmed it because they're all in line. They're all talking about it together. So there's no way, even on MAGA's own lights, to immunize Trump from the criticism, from the hypocrisy, because it's rank hypocrisy. That's why I'm genuinely scared about Fuentes and the Groypers, because they are able to speak. This is not a compliment. I don't want them to succeed, but they're able to speak plainly and acknowledge the hypocrisy in the room. That stinks. And the other Republicans are too scared to do that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the conversation. We're going to definitely make that an edit. I love that conversation, and I want more of them. I definitely want to always talk to these conservatives. I think it's good content. I think it's very helpful to see the lengths that they'll go to try to defend the indefensible. What did he say about Biden? He's like, well, I will take a negative inference on Biden because I think he's a bad person. And so I'll take a negative inference there. But because these are good people, I won't take negative inferences, and I'll withhold judgment even when there's like so obvious double standard, conflict of interest, bad decision by MAGA's own lights. No new wars. Israel and Iran. We have Venezuela, hopefully not coming up, but that's what it looks like they're indicating, that they want to do more strikes, and the acknowledgments on the economy being not what they're saying it is.